I believe this is now live on YouTube. To any members of the public tuning in, we've been having some technical difficulties. Thank you for your patience. Everyone else should be joining in about 3 minutes.
We're live. Well, now we have 6 minutes to discuss all 7 items. They fixed it.
It is live currently.
Good job, IT team.
So I guess IT is right. Just turn it off and back on and it works.
It works every single
Solution to
time.
every IT problem.
Every time. Yeah, Ethan had me as a co-host just in case he lost power or something, and I don't know if maybe that's why.
I don't think so.
I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, I don't think so either, because Shalise as the full host, it didn't work after you. There must have been some miscommunication between Zoom, the Zoom webinar, and then with our YouTube account. So, but obviously restarting the meeting, so saved the day. So here we are.
It worked, Jim.
Jim, we are currently live. And you're muted.
So it did work.
It worked.
It did.
Okay.
Wow.
Wow, a good deal. So, okay.
So we're up to 11 participants.
So we just have a few more members that we're waiting on here.
It worked?
Did.
Cool.
Sounds that way. Dean, since we had complications here for our first half hour, is there any heartache with us, holding our pre-meeting still and starting our meeting at 6:30?
I would caution against that. Maybe if there's a minute or two, but to go to half an hour. I mean, we have the announcement time. I would say we just keep going forward and skip the pre-meeting unless there's a question or two.
Okay, the only thing I would say we should discuss as a board is maybe our agenda.
And that's perfect. That's a good reason to discuss, but nothing on the merits.
Okay. Okay. Think we're just missing Marissa?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sure she'll be here in a minute. We have enough to discuss, and we are live streaming now. So I guess we have 3 minutes to discuss sort of an open item in terms of the agenda and possibly moving some of the agenda items around slightly. We did start discussing that a little bit before we had our live stream issues. So does anybody on the board have any questions, concerns, comments? specifically moving items 5, 6, and 7 to the front of the agenda, as they've been at the end of the agenda for months, and giving them the opportunity, the board the opportunity to consider that discussion, and then the remaining items to move in order behind those agenda items. Any questions, comments?
My computer is doing weird things. So if I freeze, was I just not on for a minute there?
No, you were, I saw you.
Oh, okay. Because something's coming across that's saying I have to shut everything down. So anyway, I'll log back in on my phone if that happens. If it
Okay.
last time it did that, it froze, and I just had to shut my computer off and let it do its thing.
Okay.
Sorry.
And since I'm recused from those agenda items 5 and 6 and 7, and Derek will be chair. Derek, I know you opened up this discussion at your special meeting. Did you have any comments, questions, or any concern with that in regards to the agenda?
No, I think just to repeat what I said before, I think we just have the questions about parking and the building materials, and we can get through those, and we're not going to necessarily put a time limit on it, but try to keep it within 1 to 2 hours and then move on to the next items. I think that would be good for this month. And I guess if anyone definitely is opposed, then speak up. Go ahead, Kurt.
Not opposed. I mean, in a sense, I am, but that's the big deal. I guess what I'm curious, can we give the applicants that will come later in the agenda time to check in? But I'm curious about if we don't take 2 hours and we're done at 7 with Prime, do we begin those agenda items then, or are we telling them that we won't get to those items until 8 o'clock?
I think it's better to just say check back every half hour, I guess. I mean, that's the best case or best advice, just so that we can keep moving as soon as we're done with Prime. And again, we don't know the time, but I guess it's the same as what Prime would have to do. They have to wait around until they're ready to go. So if we do that, then I'll just make an announcement at the beginning to the other members or the other applicants that to check back in periodically.
Okay, did anybody else have any other questions or comments before we get started into and open the regular meeting? I think we are still waiting for Marissa. Oh, there we go. So Marissa, that worked. We are on live stream now.
Unmute. Okay. Wasn't working. Got it to work.
Okay. So we had brief discussion about the agenda. We talked to Dean and he recommends that we go into the actual meeting instead of delaying any further.
Sure.
Okay. I guess with that said, if nobody has any other questions in our small pre-meeting session, then I'll move to our regularly scheduled agenda for June 22nd, 2020. This will be a regularly scheduled planning board meeting. Shalice, can I get a roll call of the board?
James Abdullah,
Yes.
Marissa Gilbert,
Yes.
Derek Rosenbaum,
Here.
Rick Perry,
Here.
Reg Carter,
Here.
Kurt Gurvich,
Here.
Loretta Rietsema.
Okay, thank you. opening up into other business. I guess during for all the applicants and other public members that are viewing this meeting, the board discussed in pre-meeting the idea of switching some of the agenda items and the order around, moving the items, agenda items number 5, number 6, and number 7 to the front of the agenda. In this case, I am recused from those applications, and Derek will be taking over as chair for those items.
Okay, thanks, Jim. So, yeah, as Jim mentioned, we're going to just move 5, 6, and 7, which is the prime application, up to the beginning of the meeting, and we will get through what we can with them and then move on to the next I guess, item or application 1, which would be St. John's. So for the applicants that are out there, we're going to try to move this along with Prime fairly quickly. We just, there's only so much we can do with them because we can't take any action right now. So we have some questions. We want to work on some things with them. And then, so I guess my advice is to just either stay on if you can, or check back every 15, 30 minutes and see if we're done. We're going to try to limit it to an hour, maybe a little over an hour, but we're going to see how it goes. We're not sure exactly what the time limit will be. So just to explain that again, we're going to start with items 5, 6, and 7, which is prime, and then we're going to finish that and move on to item number 1. So just a quick kind of recap and what we talked about. We had a special meeting on this past Friday, but we're trying to work on the finalizing the finding statements. We had some specific questions regarding building materials and parking, and I think that was 2 of the main things we wanted to, I guess, deliberate, ask questions, speak to Prime about, and then because the ZBA hasn't voted, we can't take any action earliest until after their special meeting. Or I guess until the July meeting that we have scheduled, our regularly scheduled July meeting. And our finding statements are kind of tied to our resolutions and our final decisions. So a lot of that I think is going to come together all in the, at the end anyway, as we get towards July. So that's what we kind of want to iron out right now, is just get some of these questions out of the way. And if we need responses or replies or new materials or whatever examples of things from Prime, we want to get those questions out now so we can have time to get those back sometime before the next meeting. And I think that's pretty much it. Milena, is there anything new that's been submitted?
Yeah, the only thing I will add is the planning board back in May did request typical floor plans for the 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, and Prime did provide those to us, and I have those in the PowerPoint if you'd like to see those. In addition, they did provide the physical samples, which I think everybody had a chance to come in and see, and they also provided some renderings, basically an up-close version of the renderings they already provided, so you could see the materials a little bit better. I do have those in the PowerPoint as well. And they updated the site plan with additional signage at the parking garage entrance. And I have that those details as well in the PowerPoint if anyone would like to see those when we start the discussion.
Okay. I saw all those things come through. I don't know if everyone else did or not, but do you guys want to have Milena go through, or do you want to just get right to asking Prime the specific questions?
We also have Ethan at the ready. He put together a PowerPoint presentation for you guys on parking. He has all those numbers that Rick requested as well. So I don't know if you want to start with parking or if you want to start with materials. It's up to you.
Let's go with the Milena presentation on materials and the close-ups of the white wall stuff and red wall stuff. And let's jump into that. Milena first.
Sure, I'll pull up the PowerPoint really quick, and I don't know if you want to invite Prime over now so that they can speak to any questions you may have about the images I'll share.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so this is one of the new renderings that Prime provided of the hardy board material on the facade of the building. This is the maroon color, the gray, and the off-white. And also the stove brick doesn't really show very well in this, but the stove brick is essentially the cornices of the building, this section here. And this is the other rendering that they provided, a close-up material of the hardy board on the corner by the Riverwalk. They also provided some examples of the materials in real life application. So this is an example of the stove brick. And we have a close-up of that as well. It looks very realistic. These are just a few more examples they provided with showing the stove brick in conjunction with the metal panels. I don't know if Steve McKenzie's on the call, but I'm sure he'll be able to answer any questions you have. That's all I have for materials, pictures, and then it goes into floor plans. So I don't know if you want to start with questions for Steve or comments.
Yeah, let's, I guess, address the building materials with any questions.
Yeah, I have a question, and it's in regard to fire rating of the material. And I'm sure that it's got to be approved by Joe before it can be applied, but it's just a curiosity question. If Steve could chime in.
I think this is Dean talking. I don't think Steve somehow got left off the invites. We were trying to get him on now, but I don't know the exact fire rating. I do know it's fire rated. So if Steve doesn't get on, we can get that answer for you.
Thanks, Dean.
It's not 3B fire rated, I don't think, but I believe it's 5A fire rated.
And Milena, that stove brick that you showed those pictures, that's the item that we saw in the office, right?
Correct, yes.
The only question I had, maybe it's for Steve also, but I guess how big are the panels and when they come together? How does that, can you tell where they merge together?
It's pretty seamless the way they go together. I think Steve can explain a little bit better how the panelized system goes in, but basically they'll join together on the mortar ends. But let me see if Steve got his invite.
Okay.
I know that there was a text going around that he didn't get an invite. I think Deb was trying to get him on. So.
Okay, maybe Ethan can help out if needed. So Milena, I guess you want to keep going through the floor plan
Sure.
while we wait.
Sure. So I had a little bit of confusion with the floor plans at first. The materials that were submitted, I didn't see where it said 3-bedroom unit floor plan. So I had to talk to Turner earlier today. And he explained to me that the 3-bedroom unit is actually the 2-bedroom with a den. When they were conducting the GEIS, Chazen had recommended that they call the 2-bedroom with a den a 3-bedroom just to be conservative. So I just wanted to clarify that before we jump into this. So there are quite a few different floor plans that were provided. I'm assuming based on the shape and size of the building and the mezzanine level. So there's a number of different 1-bedroom layouts and a number of different 2-bedroom layouts, and then of course the 2-bedroom with a den. So this first is the 1-bedroom. There's 3 different ones, A, B, and C, all pretty similar size, just different layouts again based on the location within the building. These are the 2-bedroom units, A and B. Again, you can see this would be a corner unit with a large deck. And then the 2-bedroom on the mezzanine level, 3 different layouts for that, C, D, and E. Which I believe this one right here is the one with the den. It's hard to read, but I believe this would be considered the 3-bedroom.
That's correct. Yeah.
And then additional 2-bedroom layouts. I don't know if you guys have any questions in regards to the layout of these units. I'm sure Dean can probably answer until Steve is on the call.
Is there any way you can make them any larger on your screen?
I can, let's see.
Oh, maybe I can do it. Oh, I can make you smaller by dragging something. Okay, I got it figured out. And the picture bigger. That
Is that a
helps.
little better?
That helps.
Okay.
I think I've got you as small as I can get you. Okay. And the picture as big as possible.
So these units are pretty cool. I guess I didn't realize how many had an open to below concept. So the ceilings in the living room, kitchen, dining, open concept area would actually be quite tall. I mean, I think Dean explained that at one meeting, but I guess I didn't realize how many units had that feature. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah, everything on fourth floor would have the mezzanine above it. So the area where there's a mezzanine above that doesn't have finished floor area would be a volume ceiling, would be a 17-foot high ceiling.
So, Milena, this is Turner.
Hey, Turner.
Hey, how are you? I think the ones we're looking at are actually the original. So in that submittal package, there were the original floor plans and then the modified floor plans. And I think when we adjusted the mezzanine and pulled it back, they're substantially the same. But I do think the ones you're looking at are the original floor plans.
Okay, I believe you're correct. Yes.
Yep. I mean, they are substantially similar, but just to clarify.
What exactly will the difference be, Turner?
We'd have to get Steve to speak.
I think
to
by
that.
bringing the front down, we had to shift bedrooms, anything that was along Durkee Street. Because the front of it was higher and we dropped the front of it down. I think that might have affected some of the units.
Good evening. Sorry I'm late.
Well, hi, Steve. I explained, I think there was a problem getting an invite to you, but I'm glad you're on because we got a lot of questions for you.
Okay.
So Steve, I am going to back up in my PowerPoint presentation. I have a few images of the renderings that you sent and pictures of the materials and those materials and applications. So I'm going to back up because I think the board had a few questions for you.
Okay.
Okay. Derek, I think you had a question about the stove brick.
Yeah, just real quick, and then Rick had a question. How big are the stove brick panels, and where they come together? What does that look like?
So it's actually done on site, Derek, where they assemble the insulation assembly. It's actually one of the more progressive systems when it comes to energy. It's really blending the requirement now for buildings to be wrapped in rigid insulation. That's actually what the codes now require, minimum 1 inch, like a blanket. So this is really a finish that's applied on site over the rigid insulation. And I can send you technical info. I was actually going to include a sample of the assembly, but it's kind of like what's called a rain screen system, where they build in drainage layers, et cetera, to control moisture, control water vapor, control air. So it's really one of the best systems out there from the standpoint of an overall assembly that meets all the performance requirements. And obviously now they have some aesthetic options for what you see visually on the outside. So it's really, once the 4x8 or 4x10 sheets of insulation are, and I'm oversimplifying, are applied on the building facade, that's really then a finish that's applied on site, depending on the preferred aesthetic.
So is it like a stucco?
Well, what they do, it's like a stucco. That's one of the finished options. You can get something that looks like cement, various types of stone, various types of brick, granite. And in the case of a brick finish, what they do is they, first of all, apply the grout color, if you will, over the backup layer. And then they apply a stencil that protects the grout color, depending on the pattern that you're trying to use, including corners. And then they apply then a compound over the exterior and vary the aesthetic in terms of color, texture, et cetera, to create the brick appearance. So reverse version of how you get that result. And then once that sets up, they pull off the stencil to reveal the grout pattern on the material. And in the case of a stone aesthetic, they can form the rigid insulation to create rustications, the horizontal joints, or really whatever the preferred pattern is in terms of the shadow lines, the size, let's say, of the block, as you call it, the size of the units. And that's really all part of the, I guess, part of the palette of options, finishes, et cetera, that you can create. The one that's on the screen there is actually a thin stone veneer. I think that's the Glengarry product. And that's what we'd be using on the base on the building. I think that was one of the questions I think somebody had earlier. If you look at the rendering from the corner of Durkee and Bridge, I think, as I mentioned before, at sidewalk level, the first 7 feet would be a stone veneer product, not the Stowe product. Yeah, that's the view from the corner. So that would be something like the Glengarry thin veneer product. But even down there, the building would still be wrapped with the rigid insulation because of the code requirements for energy performance. So it'll be a slightly different system for how that's done.
So that's your typical veneer panels that you screw on, or however they
Yeah, there's different systems. They can be screwed on, mechanically attached, or they can be glued on depending on which system you're using. It can come in panels, prefabricated panels in stone. So there's a number of different options for how that works.
So the picture that Milena had of the Glengarry, that's what's going to be on the base?
Yeah, that's what we're contemplating for the base, the first 7 feet at sidewalk elevation.
Okay.
So questions on the Stowe system or the materials?
Is there any way that we can have a lot more of the Stowe brick and a lot less of the, I guess it's hardy panels that look so, pardon me, synthetic, and that don't really go with the rest of downtown? I know you and I butt heads on this in terms of you have one opinion, I have a different opinion, but my gut feeling is that this building, as it looks right now with the products that you're presenting to us, is not sympathetic with the rest of downtown. And I can't see what elements that you're picking up that we're sharing sympathy with, I guess would be the phrasing. Can we get more Stowe brick? I'm impressed with that product. When I was up there and I went to see it, Matt was in the office and I said, have we got anything that we can whack this with to see if it'll chip? And he pulled out something from a room and we whacked it and it was very strong. Okay. In other words, it's not going to chip or it's bumped or anything. I pictured something less strong. So it seems like a strong product and it looks really good, but I just wish we had more of it and less of this smooth paneled stuff.
Yeah, it's a cost decision, Marisha, and that's really a question for Prime.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. The cost impact is not that much, believe it or not, between that and the hardy board. And sometimes we've had some issues in the past just finding people that are certified to put up the hardy board. So I wouldn't be opposed to Steve if you thought we could make the building look. I mean, we could almost do something like the pavilion where we pick some different brick colors. I think we do need some accents for the mass and scale, so it doesn't look like one big, huge building. But I think with using some different color bricks, we could probably do that. And I have researched the price differential, and it's not significant enough to mean it would ruin the job. So I'm not opposed to it. Steve, I mean, obviously we'd have to just figure out, how to do it, how to make it look so it's not. I think we want to have it look like a series of buildings more than just a great big building. And I think we could do that with some different color bricks, Steve.
Yeah, I'm sure we can. And Marissa, I would agree with you. I think that would certainly be more sympathetic if that's really important. I think we're looking at the old, are we back to the, there we go. I assume this is a preferred option for stories.
Yes.
Again, we're dealing with what it looks like for now. But can we go back to the picture that showed the all floors building and the co-op and yeah. So if you're looking around downtown, I think all floors might be painted. The other two are I'm going to call it a blonde brick. I'm sure there's probably a different name for it, but there really aren't too many blonde brick buildings downtown. They mostly are red.
Yeah.
Or they're bricks that have been painted red. And they might have been orange red or whatever, some other color underneath. So if we were to use a blonde brick Stowe brick product, I'm not sure that might blend in, but there really, if you go around downtown, there really aren't that many.
Yeah.
Well, that's what the center portion of the building is the blonde color, right? Essentially.
Well,
If
that's
you go
how
back.
it showed us in the Stowe brick sample.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
So let's back up for a second. I think we're heading down the same path as far as intent. Excuse me. So to Dean's comment, I do think we want to, articulate smaller scale masses. I think that's a common goal, right, Marissa?
Yes, please.
Sympathetic to the context. So that means probably using different colors, as far as the brick. One thought we had on this scheme is on the left where you have sort of the warm gray tone. That was the Hardy lap siding on the left on Bridge Street.
Right.
What we can do is switch to material again in the Stowe brick, similar color, because I think the color balance works well. I don't want to get something that's too chaotic or too busy as far as color. So if you're comfortable with how the massing comes across on this, the balcony would still be probably some sort of Hardy panel product, but I think that's fairly minimal. Certainly in terms of the massing, that shouldn't be an issue. That makes sense for the balconies. But on the warm gray areas, then we would go to a brick tone. And on the right along Durkee Street, we would do the same in a more typical, I'll say red-orange brick that you find fairly prevalent in the downtown area.
Exactly.
And I don't, again, see getting to take this the other direction, getting to literally 6 different brick tones, because I think that would be counterproductive. So, and then at the corner, the intent was to have more of a, I'll call it a split face type stone aesthetic. So we could probably approach that with the Stowe. It might be a little tougher to get the split face type texture, the rougher texture, but we can get some samples and see what's possible with that product. But again, I visualize that as being more of a stone aesthetic for the 2 corner buildings rather than brick. Not to say that it couldn't be brick and simply be a different color. I think that would be okay too. So bottom line is, at best, I would see maybe 3 brick colors if we end up with brick on the corner rather than stone. And then the other materials, the gray, in other words, being the Hardy product, but there's not that much of it. And I think having that as a panel and the color shown provides a nice overall balance. Same would be true of the spandrel areas within otherwise the brick fields.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that the board is, well, and I guess someone from the board speak up if it's not true, but the fact that we've got the indentations that kind of break up the building as well as the color changes, I think everyone's pretty comfortable with that. And I think, I mean, you just said it, but I think sticking to the same color patterns, just using the Stowe brick would achieve that.
Now, I have to say, I really like the idea of on the east wing and the south wing. I'm with Marissa that the faux brick the texture is a lot warmer. And if we had the red going south and then, you know, a gray brick going east, and then the blonde orange brick at the two corners. For myself, I think that would look really good with the rest of the color scheme as outlined, with the hardy board used for the paneling between the floor windows, and then the gray being used for the balconies.
Yeah, it's possible the gray would be metal. That again depends on budget. I think we know right now that the hardy panel fits within the budget. So obviously if that helps get to the brick look in other areas, then that would make sense as an overall balance. So.
Yeah, and I really like the contrast too. You know, it just breaks up that big wall of
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, part of it, quite honestly, is having elements that suggest a residential scale.
Yep.
However you translate that. So that's kind of the other underlying intent here is elements, whether it's windows or volumes or let's say the scale when you walk through the ground level covered walkway, for instance, again, is not losing sight of a residential kind of impact.
We accent it like with bricks, like we're talking about, Steve. It's going to end up looking a lot like the pavilion, you know, with the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
corner.
So yeah, that was.
Yeah.
Quick question, I believe they're called the lintels and the highlighting on the orange brick. Is that also a faux brick?
Yeah, it'd be the same
okay.
product.
Yeah,
the same
because
product, Loretta.
that color, to
Uh-huh.
me, I don't know, Marissa, what you think, but that color, if that was done on the east wing with then the red hardy board in between and the gray balconies and the limestone effect stones down on the bottom, I think that is I think it'll look really good.
Does the Stowe, I'm going to call it Stowe brick lintel that you've got there, is it actually, does it look like a brick or does it sort of attempt to look like granite?
It looks like limestone, actually.
Limestone.
I have a sample here in the office if you want me to.
Maybe you can hold it up to the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I really like that stuff. I think it looks great.
Elena, I think there's an example of it in the photographs.
Yeah, there was. That one.
There, that one.
Yeah, 78.
Actually, that might not be exactly it.
I
78.
saw brick as a lentil, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but the material around the windows, the rest of the building, I think that's a limestone effect, is what it looks like to me. On 78. Yeah, here we go.
Here's a sample of the limestone finish. Can you see that?
Can you blow Steve's picture up?
What's that?
Can they blow your picture up, Steve, so you
If he's the speaker, we can. Keep talking.
All right.
Keep talking, and then it's all fuzzy.
if there's a way to make that take the whole screen up.
Yeah. But it looks, this is probably one of the most realistic finishes they offer. Whether it's fairly smooth Indiana limestone or more textured type of finish.
I don't know about you, Marissa, but the more textured, the better.
Probably if it's a lintel and it's supposed to.
No, well, yeah, but I'm not talking about for the lintels. I'm talking about for the east facade.
Well, that would be a brick then, not a limestone. Poor Kurt's got a question here.
Mike, it's difficult to envision what this might look like. Sounds like from hearing Steve and Dean talk that there is a building called the Pavilion, I think you referenced, that this may look like.
Yeah, Pavilion Grand.
Here's the building you could send.
This has a little more texture. I don't know if you can see that. It's a little rougher texture.
Not well. Well,
Hard to see.
Yeah.
But it looks, again, like limestone.
And Kurt, the building I was talking about, if you want to Google it, it's in Saratoga. Pavilion Grand Hotel where we use different colored bricks to accent the
Oh,
different areas.
yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, so that's, Steve designed that for us as well. So it'll be somewhat similar to that, by accenting the different areas.
Okay, thanks, Dean.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I also have a border terrier here if you want to see a handsome dog. What's that?
Sorry.
There.
Steve,
There you go.
one
Yeah.
more question on the, I forget, what's the mezzanine level building material on the exterior?
That's the hardy panel board and batten.
That is, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, there's some pictures now that are up of the pavilion, Kurt. Different color bricks accenting.
Yeah.
Same thing, we have the mezzanine on top. Same height building, 4-story
Right.
with a mezzanine.
And the white sections are what
That's
on the
brick.
pavilion?
That's brick. It's just a light color brick.
Light colored brick. Okay.
I like that. I like that. What do you think, Marissa?
Yeah, I like that too.
I think, and it matches the lintels and the
Yeah.
framing around. I think that looks fabulous.
It also
And
looks really cool lit up with the different colors with some of the uplighting that we'll use.
Yeah.
And the spandrel there is a metal panel
Yeah, it looks really good.
in the corner.
Looks really good. I think.
It draws your eye to the corner of the building, which is what we're trying to do on Durkee Street as well. Here's an example. We were talking about some of the rooftop gardens that we are going to look to do in the mezzanine. And that one photo there, you can see the landscaping on the rooftop gardens.
Oh, yeah.
It's the second picture. Yeah, that one there. That's the
Tina,
type.
I'm sorry, did you say you're looking to do that in
Yeah,
Plattsburgh?
we're going to have rooftop areas, so we'll definitely be doing decks up there with artificial turf. Those are actually lightweight pavers that are up there as well too. So we'll be doing, we're definitely gonna get some greenery up on the rooftop areas. Same thing we did with if you want to Google another one, Electric City Apartments in Schenectady, we did a whole rooftop.
It's called Electric City.
Yeah. There should be a rooftop.
There it is.
You can see if you go down to the second row and look to the second one over from the left, you can kind of see what we did on the rooftop. Yeah, there you go. That type of thing. That's all on the rooftop, that whole garden. And then you can see the decks above on the left side of the page. Those are on top of our clubhouse area, but those are probably closer to the type of decks that on the very top, you can see, your finger's right on it. On the top level, there'll be similar decks like that. So that's the kind of idea that we like to do with the rooftops. Gives people like their own little backyard, That was another advantage too, when we moved the mezzanine back, it gave a little bit more room for that as well too.
And Rick, I know you had the question about fire rating.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by the composition of the material, Steve. What is the fire rating on that product?
Well, that depends on the overall wall assembly. We'll be building this as 5A construction, Rick. So it's not just about the insulation, but our preference would be to use polyiso anyway.
Okay.
It's considered virtually non-combustible. It doesn't melt like some of the other types of insulation that have been a problem. It basically chars like wood, and then it doesn't burn. So that would be our first choice. Again, depending on budget. And the exterior wall otherwise has to meet all the code requirements as far as an assembly.
Yeah.
So
Well, I know, and
Yeah.
this isn't an interview to pass a building permit, but it was a curiosity question.
no, it's a good question.
Thank you.
Yep.
I guess one last question for me, just as far as the color. Is there any studies or anything about fading over time or changing colors, things like that?
Not that I know of, Derek. I can ask that question, but I'm not aware of that being an issue.
Okay. And you guys have, what's the oldest building, I guess, that you've had this product on?
Oh boy, that's a tough question.
Just throwing it out there if you know.
Yeah, it's as I think, as I said last time, the product was invented in the 60s over in Germany. So, I'm sure there's many older examples out there. I can't say it's a product I've used a lot. We're using it on a new project now in Rotterdam that's under construction. It's an office building. We've used it for trim, small areas like where you'd otherwise, let's say, use stone or precast. There's actually a building here in Burlington down the street. If you've been on College Street near the waterfront, you know where the Echo Center is, the museum. There's a multifamily housing project in College that has a curved cornice, corner of College and Battery. The entire cornice in that is Stowe. So it's that big curved, heavy cornice expression on the building, to give you an idea. I think that's been completed about 8 to 10 years, something like that.
Okay. I mean, and worst case scenario, can it be painted? I mean, just like the other buildings?
Yeah, it can. Sure.
Okay.
Yep. Question on the floor plans, a unit plan or something?
Can I just get a reminder on the number of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms?
Yeah, there's 52 one bedroom, I think 61 2-bedroom units, and 2 of the 3-bedroom. The 3-bedroom actually a 2-bedroom plus den, depending on how you characterize it. There's actually a new plan. I apologize. We hadn't provided the latest version of the 2-bedroom plus den, but there's an earlier version in here somewhere. There it is. So it's a variation on the 2-bedroom B. There's another page that shows the earlier version. Yeah, there it is.
So how many were those? 3?
2. Yeah, there's 2 of those. They're on the top floor on the corner where they would have access to the mezzanine. So the mezzanine is going to be pulled back 17 feet from both sides. So the plan on the main level is similar, but the stair comes up to the left of the dining table there to the mezzanine. The mezzanine's tucked into the back lower left-hand corner on the mezzanine level plan. Then you have a bathroom that's stacked over the one downstairs on the left. So it could be a 3-bedroom unit.
And just to clarify that a little bit, why you usually hear 3-bedroom instead of 2-bedroom with a den is because in the GEIS, they were considered 3 bedrooms so that there was a conservative analysis for things like traffic and so forth.
And that'll have a really big roof terrace on the corner. Any other questions on unit plans? Yeah, a lot of those are outdated now because we changed the design of the mezzanine. So it's really just probably the color ones at the end, Milana, if you're the one scrolling through this.
I am, but I don't think I included those.
Okay,
No.
okay.
It's just shifting where some of the bedrooms are for the most part, Steve, because of
Yep.
pulling everything back. But besides that, the overall sizes and unit mix and whatnot are pretty much the same.
Yeah, most are the basic 1-bedroom plan, and I think the basic 2-bedroom at the front. 2-bedroom A is the majority, along with some loft units, and then if the page before this should have the 1-bedroom plan on it. 1-bedroom A. And the other mezzanine plans have gone away.
Okay, Does anyone have any other questions about the building materials or the units?
I just want to make sure that we definitely are making an attempt to dump the hardy board panels that are shown in the two really good close-ups, right? That were sent out.
Yeah, replacing the lap siding, Marissa?
The lap siding, yes, that's
Yeah.
gone, right? We are not talking
Yeah.
about lap siding at all anymore, right? Am I making that clear? Yep,
Yep.
yeah.
On the
Okay.
street side, just,
Where it shows.
Yeah, definitely making that commitment. The one thing that we may want to look at is the back of the building that isn't visible. Is that, are you concerned about that area as well?
Well, I'm concerned about also along the Riverwalk, because that's visible. It's actually all visible if you think about it. But the lighter colored lap siding to me is more, I'm going to say more offensive than the darker colored. Just more artificial, more out of place with downtown.
mhm.
Yeah, I think definitely like Durkee Street, Bridge Street, the wings. Steve, you and I can get together with Jason tomorrow and take a good, or whenever, if you're available, take
Yeah.
a good look at that. And then
Sure.
look at the price impact. And then the only thing is that the U on the inside and the back, it would be visible from the Riverwalk, but that would be the only spot. And it wouldn't have to be light color. I just, it is a few bucks a square foot more. It starts to add up. And let's see, Steve, if we can work with Jason to figure out a way to get it around the back well too, and the U.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think we can make a commitment to you guys today that we'll figure out a way to get it in the Durkee Street, Bridge Street areas, and the wings that are visible in the back.
Dean, are you talking about facing the parking lot, the surface parking lot to the south?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the areas that are going to be visible. I mean, we really need to,
Okay.
I think you got to keep it consistent in the areas that are visible. Actually, if you go back to Electric City, you'll see how we did the front, the sides, but the back is actually, look at the white in the back on that one. That's actually hardy board. So the front's all different masses of bricks, and then back is that's what I mean by back area would be that larger picture that's up now, which would kind of be like RU facing the river.
So the inside of the U, in other words, is what Dean's referring to.
So maybe the two back walls of the wings facing the river would be still brick, and then the inside of the U facing.
Yeah, that's how we did it in Schenectady. All the end walls were all, well, the one end wall, it's a huge brick wall because there's actually a lot next door, so we can do that, unfortunately. But the back wings are also of brick. So everything that you can see kind of from the streets, we did in a full, it's actually a full brick as well too.
Okay. And Steve, I'm assuming you can send us pictures of that as soon as it's ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
One quick question I have, and this is not an aesthetic question. The light colored hardy board that you're using, or the white, whatever the material is, on the inside of the U, is that something that promotes energy conservation, or do darker colors promote energy conservation? I mean, I know that, if you have a very light colored house, you're going to reflect a lot of your light. If you've got a darker material, it's going to absorb more. Is that something that you guys take into consideration, or do you just go with the light color because that's something that is typically?
Well, I think for energy conservation, if anything, the Stowe product would be better because there's 2 inches of rigid insulation built, into the assembly is similar. So I would think that the hardy board in general, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's what the R value is per inch of that rigid, probably adds an extra 6 R value. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is going to be, it's also the material itself, but it's also just a tighter envelope for controlling air infiltration and water vapor, that sort of thing. The other comment, Loretta, your question, it's interesting. They found that actually darker roofs are better in northern climates because the cooling load is many ways the greater concern. So even, places like Minnesota, they're finding that darker colored roofs actually make more sense, ironically.
Right.
Oh, but it's a complicated question. You really have to look at the whole energy model for a building to really find the right answer. I will say otherwise, we tend to let aesthetics kind of dictate color choice because to tip the balance otherwise, as far as that.
I was just curious.
Yeah. That's a good question.
Can you guys tell me what material is planned for the exterior of the mezzanine?
Yeah, that's the Hardy panel, Reg. And that would be the board and batten look. That's the white sample that was in the box that I sent over.
That's the material we're talking about replacing in the other areas. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it becomes, again, a budget consideration. I think that might be too much of a stretch, but I'll let Dean comment if he wants to. But, we're trying to be sensitive to the overall balance, obviously, on cost.
It's Reg, it's a board and batten on the mezzanine, but on the face, what's showing now is not board and batten. That's just regular horizontal.
Right. That's actually the lap siding.
Okay.
That you see on the close-up view.
Dean, I think you were muted when you.
That's what would be on the mezz, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
On the mezz is the board and batten look, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Different direction. Technically, does the lines we're seeing, okay, are they actually an indentation? In other words, is it something that's going to catch dirt?
It's actually the lap siding, Marissa. We were two different sizes on the siding. One would have a 4-inch exposure, another would have 8. So it creates a staggered kind of effect to, get away from the typical siding look, if you will, creates a more varied shadow line.
Right.
So that's how you achieve that effect.
But is it an actual indentation? Is there an edge? Is there a lip edge there where we see a dark line?
Yeah, it's like, again, typical.
Like a clapboard where
it's like clapboard siding.
Like clapboard siding where it's
Right.
It's not an indentation in the sense that it catches
It's lapped
dirt.
over the
Yeah.
top.
Okay. Okay.
No, it's right. It's clapboard siding.
Okay.
Okay.
Just thinking about dirt accumulating on a light colored,
Sure.
whatever, and then it rain, and then the rain makes marks in the dirt, and
Yeah.
because
But
it's
we're-
light, because it's light
yeah.
colored. That's why.
Right. So we're going to switch that to the stove. Is what we
Yeah.
said.
Right.
So
Do we want to jump into the parking discussion?
I just have
But I was
one comment.
going to say.
Taking this all back to the findings statement, I just want to make sure what this board would like to see by way of revised rendering, something that you can then cite to in the finding statement to show this change in the architecture and the mitigation that's been discussed tonight. So is that what the board would like, is kind of a revised rendering from that?
Yes, please.
Yes.
and when would you need that by? When's the next meeting?
Yesterday.
July 27th is the next meeting.
Okay. So if it's yesterday, just go to the other rendering from the corner. which will reflect the intent. I'm sorry, Alana, what did you say next meeting was what?
July 27th.
Okay, that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, so I know we had some questions on parking and the calculations, and Rick, did you want to start with that?
Yeah, from all the feedback that we've received, the most detrimental change seems to be in the parking. And believe it or not, it may not even be a question for Prime, as it impacts the neighborhood. And, you know, the change in the special assessment district downtown and locations of spaces. So I had made a request at our last meeting for a presentation by Ethan to just identify the methodology that he had used in coming up with his parking study. And of course, we always have Carl Walker's study to reference also, but I think it would be a good opportunity for us to understand how the calculations were done, the process that was used. And I know that they are identified. I just like it elaborated on a little bit more. And, you know, how we've, how the material that we've received is trying to prove that it's not a detriment to the neighborhood. So Ethan, if you could share some of that, I'd appreciate it.
Give me a second.
Sure. Thank you.
I want to, while we wait for this to share, I want to thank everyone for putting up with the IT delays. Can everyone see the presentation, or do they just see my desktop?
Yes, no, well, I don't know.
Can see it.
Desktop.
Both?
Both.
I see it.
No, we see the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
I see what you mean.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because I have two screens right now. So like if I need to email people during the meetings.
Yep.
All right, here we go. So, you know, as you guys have mentioned, there is the Carl Walker parking study that was completed in 2018 that used parking counts from 2017. Those were about eight counts during a week in September. They picked a good time and, you know, followed sound methodology. So as the city kept moving forward and forward with, you know, considering parking, the impacts of parking, considering parking system changes, I started getting really curious about, like, you know, how can we supplement that information? Where I live, I see the Durkee parking lot all the time, every day. Right now I can turn over my shoulder and I can see my beat up old car sitting in the lot. So I go to that lot often in all times of the day, whether it's early morning to go out to run, late at night. So there was a lot of discussion, public discussion at times, the usage of parking. So I was trying to really supplement that, and that's where this started. Before there was a GIS, before all this, you know, it just kept evolving. So as it says here, it's to determine the existing parking demand after the resumption of parking enforcement efforts in January 2019. So all in all, what this information is going to show is 121 parking counts over the course of the last year. So 89 of them were for just the parking lots. So for parking lots, that includes the Durkee Street lot, the Broad Street lot, what I call the City Hall Place lot, which is right next to the Pepper. I also include the Court Street lot, which is the site of the former Hotel Cumberland. Those were the parking lots that I measured. And then for the on-street parking, that was just the parking, the street parking in the downtown special assessment. So you see how it says the 43 accounts occurred during the work week, which is Monday through Friday between 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we separated those out is because after looking at all the information, it really shows that the peak parking demand for Plattsburgh is between this work period, which I think for anyone, for all of us here, it's not surprising. You have a lot of employees from the county, from the city, from all the individual restaurants and businesses in downtown, plus the residents such as myself. That's during the work that Monday through Friday. 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. That was our most important time frame. That's where we really focus a lot of our discussions since. So this is kind of a chart just to show an outline. So between the times, between the hour between 8 to 9, and all the way to the times between 4 to 5 p.m. So it shows, the average utilization on the on-street and off-street, and as well as totaling when you combine them together. So it's important really to notice average, because when I went out and I did the parking counts, I'm one person, I walk around in the half hour it took me, I take the counts, I write them down, I transfer them to a spreadsheet. So the moment I leave, let's say a parking lot, 5 cars could pull in, 5 cars could pull out. So really it's just an average. And that's the reason why, I kept adding more and more counts, is to try to make up for any potential error from just a small sample size. So that was why I kept adding.
Ethan, are the numbers here the percent utilized or the percent empty?
Percent utilized.
Okay.
So you're going to see that total percentage on the far right. So going up from lowest is 42 in the morning, which really isn't surprising as most people are driving into the city. And then around that lunchtime hour, the middle of the day, it peaks at 66. So like what Carl Walker said, what, a lot of what the current parking literature is 85% utilization is this magic threshold. Where essentially there's always available spots, but the parking is generally full. So the idea with the 85% is to use that as a guideline. When you're above 85%, you consider things such as increasing parking supply and or parking management. So the one thing that never changes if you just add more parking is everyone likes to park right in front of their favorite restaurant. If I want to go and park right in front of Hobie's, it doesn't matter if I build a parking garage right down the street, I want to park in front of Hobie's. Parking supply does not always deal with convenience. So that was the utilization. And so to go to your point, Kurt, this next chart.
Ethan, can we go back to that chart before we lose it?
Yeah.
So that the total over there is just an average of on-street and off-street, but it's not a weighted total, right? In other words, we don't have how many on-street spaces. Say the on-street spaces are 35% of the available street spaces, and the off-street parking spaces are some other percentage. So that total on the right is just a straight average of the two, but proportionally, how many are on street and how many are off street?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because actually the portion pretty much works out to a 50-50 split, the way we have it with the public parking. So we have about the 413 of the off-street parking spaces, and then the 407 for the on-street parking spaces that I counted.
Okay.
So that's why it seems like, it's just a straight average, but no, it actually
the reality is it's a weighted
It
average.
is weighted. It's just the way our public parking supply on-street and off-street exists, as I had measured it, it equals out to that 50-50 split.
And could you very quickly give us the street limitations of the SAD area, so we have an idea what's, like, for instance, for the on streets, what streets you were actually on? So like Oak Street by Cornelia do we have a diagram for that just around?
Do not have a diagram for that, but I can explain it. It's essentially, it's the SAD boundary with a slight modification.
Okay.
So I do from the Oak Street, from Cornelia to Broad.
Okay.
And then I go from Broad down to Durkee Street.
Okay.
And then I go down Durkee Street, and I went down across Bridge Street to the end of Veterans Bridge.
Okay.
And then further up north, I went up all to where the City Hall Place connects into Cornelia, and then connect that back to Oak Street.
Okay. So for instance, the former MLD building, which I think has not sold yet, right? It's empty. City owns it, is sort of a weird L-shaped lot, which seems to have a good sized chunk of parking, is actually outside of this district, right?
Correct. It is outside the district, even though, you can see it right across from City Hall Place.
And it's very close to the Pepper. Okay. But okay.
And it's the same. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. No, essentially is it the central business district zoning?
Exactly.
District. Okay.
Okay. Just wondered.
Do you have separate utilization numbers on the lots that make up these total numbers?
Yes, not in this presentation. I try to keep this as simple as possible because it's easy to get lost in a lot of numbers. But that's something I can, of course, always send to the board.
I'd like to take a look at that if we could.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
So I'm going to move on.
Okay.
So this is the available SAD parking spaces at those average utilization rates. So once again, it's weighted. So the percentage on the last slide, multiplied by what's available at that time frame gives you this number. And so it really just reflects the percentages, except it shows out of the, at the 1 to 2 p.m. when we city had the highest recorded total utilization rate, the available parking is at its least. So out of the 820 spaces, there's 278 spaces available. And once again, that doesn't mean it's always right in front of the popular areas. There's a lot of parking spaces, whether on Broad Street in front of the church or alongside a lot of Oak Street that are often vacant. So there's parking in this SAD that does exist, but it's not always centrally located, let's say at Turkey Street, which, as we discussed in former PPAC meetings, and as the board will see when I send them further information, more detailed information, is certain areas, yes, experience high utilization at certain times a day, such as Turkey Street, the Turkey parking lot, which gets what I recorded at 87% utilized. So all these numbers are very in line with the Carl Walker study. There is a reduction in both the utilization from the off-street and the on-street, but that's also before, when Carl Walker did his study, that was before there was any parking enforcement. When these counts were done, there was parking enforcement. There was a slightly different managed system, which can be a good cause for, or at least a reason for, any changes in the information. And I'm gonna move on.
Ethan, I've got a quick question. I don't know what time period you did your study over, but is there a seasonal difference in terms of how much parking we use downtown?
A lot of our parking downtown is really employee driven. From what I've found, that's the key. The parking utilization that I have found, through with like Turkey Street, the parking lot, for example, it fluctuates a little bit, but it's pretty much the same year round. I'm sure you can get on street changes a little bit. I don't have that specific answer in front of you, but that's something you'll be able to see when I forward you further information.
Thanks,
Ethan, one more, sorry. Were any of these studies done after the county had reconfigured their lot?
I believe there was a couple counts done later.
Okay.
But I would have to clarify.
That's okay. I know it was close towards the
I
end
think
of 2019.
The vast majority was done before the county finished their lot update. That was right before Thanksgiving, I believe.
Okay. Thanks, Ethan.
The numbers we're looking at here, once again, include in week as well as weekend.
These are just the weekdays, that work week, Monday through Friday. Parking utilization actually drops on the weekend. Not to mention, there's also during the weekend, there's also a larger parking supply because you have a large parking provider such as the county on their Court Street, which now has 205 spaces, which would be available for parking during the weekends and or special events. So once again, with that updated information, I can always include some of the weekend counts as well, just so you can compare. But there is a drop off from the weekday to the weekend in parking supply.
One of the other things that wasn't necessarily in the studies, but we're going to find, and to what extent remains to be seen, but our parking within our building, it's logical to assume that there's going to be people that will now be walking to work because they have a place to live downtown. And therefore, the actual demand for parking is going to go down by the number of people that we have that are living with us and walking to work. And we find that in the city locations. There's quite a few people who don't even move their car during the week.
Is there any other question with the information I provided so far?
Ethan, you make reference of people wanting to park at the closest point possible to their destination. There are some that do that out of convenience, and then some that do that out of necessity. With respect to a zoning district that allows for medical occupancies, do we have flexibility in the city? And this might be a Matt question, but in the parking plan, do we have any flexibility to kind of float? That may or may not be a proper term, but to try to provide some handicap parking space that's a little more convenient than having to roll a wheelchair up a hill. And the reference I'm making is Durkee Street. If someone's parking in the public portion of the remaining parking lot, if they had to access an occupancy, their doctor's office, do we have flexibility in our parking design downtown that could accommodate for a few more handicap parking spaces?
Yeah, Rick, I can speak to that. For the handicap spaces, the new parking that the city is creating, of course, handicap spaces will be included in that design, and the total number will equal the number that we will be losing when the Durkee Street parking lot is developed. Speaking to future flexibility, I'll go back to the Parking Advisory Committee. One of the primary purposes of that body was to continuously evaluate the city's downtown parking system for any deficiencies, anything that could be done better. So as that system evolves, if we find or if we hear from concerned citizens or people with disabilities who are having trouble accessing certain buildings, that is certainly something that we will incorporate into our plans. And if there are additional spaces that we need to build into on-street parking, that is certainly something that we can look at.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Yeah, go ahead, Ethan.
Okay. So, Rick, you had come to our office and you discussed, and then of course you officially requested Friday, talking about what's the prescribed parking requirements per the city code within the SAD. So with their downtown, without that SAD, all the buildings in this hypothetical would be subject to parking requirements mandated by the city zoning ordinance. And these parking requirements are very dependent on use, as you are all aware of, and the total amount would be presented as a range of values. So I had looked at some historical information that we had on file. I had compared to a list that I had created a little while back, including all the downtown businesses and buildings in the SAD using the Clinton County Real Property Office information at the time. The inventory that they provide often breaks down the uses of each building, whether it's retail, office space, not storage. So I had looked at that and created a spreadsheet. Unfortunately, I feel at the time that we were working on, there's a lot of variables, and the numbers that we give, of course, they're all approximate. They're, best guess. By no means is it a guarantee. But what we do know is that within the SAD now, we have about 820 parking spaces, meaning on street and off street. And in that same footprint, we have around 700 parking spaces owned by other entities, Clinton County, Community Bank, Church, the Strand, all that are in the SAD. So when you add those together, you get approximately 1,500 parking spaces. So looking at that information that we did have, unfortunately, currently with the building inspector's office, they do not have that specific breakdown of use for every single building. So as you guys know, a restaurant space is a great example. You have 1,000 square feet of a restaurant on the first floor of a building. So that use, if it's all kitchen space, that's 4 parking spaces it requires. If it's all dining for public access, that's up to 20 parking spaces. So there's a range between 4 to 20 that this 1,000 square feet could use. So that's why this is all very rough and based on the information. It's definitely, it's a range. There's other issues such as the way retail is calculated without a very specific breakdown of the exact floor plans that just with the time that we have, we'll be unable to provide. But with retail, it's, the 1 space per 250 square feet that are open to the public, and then plus any additional parking spaces as required. So, things like elevator space, bathrooms, those are kind of things that if you went floor by floor, you would be able to reduce that overall square footage, that gross floor, and reduce that parking number. But without that information, we had to do the best that we could. So based on what we do, the information that we do have, there's that approximate total of 2,800 to 3,600 parking spaces that would need to exist in order for the city's zoning ordinance to apply to all these buildings and for them to be in compliance. So as you know, we have roughly 1,500 parking spaces now. So that would be twice the capacity which currently exists. And that obviously that parking demand that's prescribed conflicts with the utilization and what's actually being observed by myself and Carl Walker. For example, that would equate to the construction of roughly 5 new Durkee parking lot street size footprints, which we know how with surface parking can take up a lot of area, and that could be roughly half the size of the entire SCD footprint. So one thing to look at, which I thought was an interesting example, would be the Strand Theater. So based on our zoning code parking, theater, meeting hall, all require 1 parking space per 4 seats of a maximum capacity. Since the Strand is 950 seats when packed, that would require 238 parking spaces alone for its use. So I think that's a great example because it really highlights the benefit of the SAD, the benefit of being able to be flexible with mixed uses, different hours of operation, and sharing parking really apply because we see her downtown now. And, the Strand is able to have their events. Downtown is able to function, and all the information that the city has that we've gotten from our consultants all show that the parking system and the parking supply is adequate and will be adequate. And that's pretty much the end of the information I have for this. So if there's any other questions, please let me know.
No, Ethan, I really want to make the point, and I appreciate all your hard work in a short time, given that it was over a weekend. But in order to put value to an alternate method of calculating parking demand and actual parking provided, I felt that it was important to know what the actual prescribed demand by the code is. And whether it's practical or not is, I guess, in the numbers. I think you've proven the numbers to be quite valuable in this case. But I see the value in, rather than just accepting the alternate method of calculation, with understanding the background and why we are out looking for parking studies. And it brings meaning to the alternate method when compared to the prescribed method. And it seems by your calculations that it's an impractical formula. So thank you for providing that information. I find value in it, and yeah, I'm appreciative of your help.
Yeah, no problem. And as I think Matt brought up a good point too, is going forward, this is just how the parking plan is and the parking system is as of now. Going forward, the city community development office, of course, hopes for more growth privately, publicly, small businesses, large businesses, any kind of growth that we can get downtown. And parking will change in the future, and there will be needs to keep reassessing what our utilization is. How can we properly manage it? Do we need to add more parking? Do we need to build a parking garage? These are all questions that the city and the community development office, along with the other city departments, will have to continue to observe and really think about as the city keeps moving forward. But I will also, as I said and is requested, I will provide more information, some more about the weekend parking counts, any changes with seasonality. So I will start collecting that information and hopefully get it to you before the end of the week.
Thanks, Ethan. I had a quick question, just something I thought of that it's going to help me, I guess, visually, but in the closest proximity to the current Durkee Street lot, I guess I want to just kind of tally up how many spaces are being added and how many are being lost. So there's how many in the current, Matt or Ethan?
Derek, I think you're breaking up a little bit.
Oh, okay.
But I think your idea is essentially let's drop a radius on Durkee Street, a reasonable radius for the parking lot. How much parking is getting lost and or move publicly accessible parking will be replaced.
Yeah, I mean, essentially.
I've got the down app pulled up so I can share that screen so everybody can see it.
Okay, because I mean, if you're looking right at, let's say the office buildings, the multi-tenant buildings right along Durkee Street. I mean, you've got the Broad Street lot that's added a certain number of spots. You've got Arnie Pavone that's added, and you've got maybe let's say 50 or 60 more public spaces at the prime lot, and that's assuming that the spaces that are private to prime are going to be adequate for their uses. Okay, so
are we adding 38 spaces on Durkee Street, or is that the final count that there's 38 spaces on Durkee Street?
No, that's the additional parking.
That's the additional parking.
Yeah.
And how many are we losing, or how many total are in the Durkee Street lot right now?
289.
289, okay. So let's say you lost 239 because you keep 50. You're adding 21 at Broad, add 38 on Durkee, add 103. Wait, I'm doing that wrong. So just with Arnie
And I
Pavone,
should add that there's a few minor adjustments in here that were not included in this map. They occurred a little farther along in the process. For instance, there's 3 or 4 spaces within West Elcom Park, public spaces that of course will not be available once that park is developed. So if you take everything within the SAD, the parking that we are losing, plus the parking that we are adding as a whole within the district, at the end of all that, we will end up with 20 fewer publicly accessible spaces within the whole of the district than we currently have right now. And compare that against the 278 spaces that are currently available within the SAD, even at peak utilization. So even with that, that minor loss of 20 spaces, you've still got over 250 public spaces within the SAD that at peak usage, based on what we've seen, will not be occupied.
okay.
And if you count the additional parking spaces that the county added in their Oak Street lot, which lies about half a block outside the SAD, but is still used by a lot of the people who work within it, that brings you up to just about a 1-to-1 parking replacement in the downtown as a whole.
Okay, so I mean, if you're talking about just convenience, I'd say, the current Durkee Street lot, the Arnie Pavone and the Broad Street are most convenient to those Durkee Street buildings. And basically you're about 70 short of what's there now when you put them all together, but then the county government center picks up the most of that plus extra if you go to Oak Street. So yeah, that helps. That definitely helps. Thank you, Matt.
No problem.
So anyone have any questions on this or any more questions for Ethan or Prime as far as parking?
I have sort of a budget question. If we're going to have paid parking, can the city actually afford to have, pardon my phrase, a meter maid? It won't be a meter maid. It'll be a something method somehow to keep people moving so that they don't take a parking space for 4 hours at lunch. Or to make some parking spaces, I know some are 15 minutes now for running into the bank. Some are just an hour in some places where you might be getting a coffee. What is anticipated on that with our budget situation of not being able to have enough people to staff jobs?
Sure. For the parking system itself, it was always the city's intention to create a financially self-sufficient system. So a system that at the very least can cover the costs involved in its operation, including any payroll expenses that would be required to employ a parking enforcement officer, which the city currently has, and any additional staff that might be required in order to effectively manage the system. So we would endeavor to set parking rates, whether it be for permits or kiosk hourly rates, just high enough to cover the costs of the system, but not any higher than that. We certainly don't want to charge any more than we have to in order to effectively manage the system. So the intention is to have this parking system have no burden on the general fund. It would simply be a self-sustaining system that pays for itself.
For some reason, I'm thinking that earlier in a discussion, we talked about the money coming in from parking that was replacing the special assessment district taxes going towards something else. I don't recall it going toward a self-sufficient system. We had talked about that, but I thought it was going somewhere else in an earlier discussion.
The replacement of the city's special assessment district, which right now is about $70,000 a year from all downtown property owners, that would be factored into the parking rates that are charged by the city. So that would effectively be treated as an administrative cost of the system simply because it is needed to maintain the lots as they stand, basically replacing the special assessment levy that exists now. So it would be replacing that special assessment levy plus the administrative costs of any personnel plus any technology costs on top of that.
Matt, do you know about how much those additional costs above the 70 are, the administrative and tech costs?
The upfront cost for the kiosks, depending on how many we buy, I think based on the number that was recommended by the Parking Advisory Committee, it was, Ethan, do you recall the number? I think it was 13 or 14 kiosks at about 5,000, 6,000 a piece.
That's roughly correct. Yeah, I mean, we can go back and look at those minutes, and if there's any corrections to that, we'll pass it forward to the board.
Yeah. So Kurt, I don't have an exact idea, but you know, it's something that if you would like further information, we could put that together for you.
I'd like to ask a question of Dean. The 50 spaces that are being turned over for public parking, if your parking need should reduce, will you be increasing the number of spaces available for public parking?
Oh, he's muted.
Dean, you're muted.
Okay, sorry. There's 86 stalls, I believe, on that lot. So the concept is going to be, you know, we're going to have a gate there. We are intending to charge for parking, you know, mostly to handle our maintenance and upkeep of the lot. We're not, you know, we may end up just keeping all 86 hourly. We may have a little bit of an overflow demand from the apartments that we may have some extra monthly stalls. But if not, we certainly would prefer to have the revenue to help offset the cost. And therefore we would open them up, you know, all of those up to the general public. I got a feeling more than 50 will likely be opened up to the public.
But I think what I imagine, Rick, and this is Turner, to answer your question, I got to imagine like that's going to be addressed in an agreement, a parking agreement that will stipulate.
Well, yeah, no, the
cases
50
that are
stalls
allowed.
already are, and we have to dedicate 50 stalls that we can't enter into any long-term arrangements with our tenants on. So that is in the, I believe, we got a bunch of agreements, but I believe that's addressed in the development agreement right now.
Okay, but as the number of parking spaces, say that number should go down because you have more residents than you anticipated that are working in the downtown district, your available parking could go up because theoretically they may not need vehicles. But if that scenario should ever happen, you would make them available for.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it wouldn't make sense for us to not have those available to try and generate some income for the upkeep. So my gut is that we probably will have extra spaces, but I don't want to commit to that till we see. I don't want to lose rents because of it. But we are committing to making 50 available to the general public. Again, my gut is it'll be higher, but we'll have to see where it goes. And again, I'm going to guess that at least 20 of our apartments will be walking to work in one fashion or another.
I'm going to ask you, Dean, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I realize these apartments are fairly expensive. That's the whole point. And you're talking about these people walking to their jobs. What jobs downtown do you think these people are going to be working at that can make the kind of money to afford your apartments?
Well, so in your MSA, there's about 80,000 people. 58% of the people in your MSA make in excess of $50,000. So 58% of your population that we will likely draw renters from can afford our apartments. And it may be a household of two people making 50,000, but at 50,000 at a 30% to 40% for income to monthly income for housing, they would be able to afford our apartments. So you have 32% of your population are renters right now. The national average is closer to 37%. A lot of that's probably because you have a lack of product available right now for quality housing. So there's plenty of people downtown that are making, over $50,000, and 58% of your MSA right now does make over $50,000.
Marissa, I'd also like to add that as a result of this shutdown and COVID, many large companies have been having their employees work from home. And for instance, my son who works for Amazon out in Seattle, they are going to be work from home through 2021. And in 2022, they're going to reevaluate whether or not they ever have offices. Because there's been not only no loss in productivity, but an increase in productivity. And Microsoft and many other companies are doing the same thing. So it's clear that the movement for people to be, especially for people working in administrative type jobs, that they're going to be working from home going forward. And so the need for office space in downtowns is going to plummet, and people are going to be able to choose where they want to live. And hopefully
locally,
MVP
is doing the same thing.
Wait a minute, what?
I'm sorry. I was just saying that MVP is doing, healthcare is doing the same thing on a local level. So it's definitely going on.
And to just provide a specific example of a downtown employee who may walk to work and live in the prime development, within 3 or 4 blocks, and Dean Schneller can speak to this, there are somewhere between 20 and 30 law offices. And I'm sure many of them would be able to not only be able to afford to live in the prime development, but also have a very quick walk to work.
I agree with you. It's just that I do taxes for a living. So I see what people make. I see where they live. And I'm thinking if you're a lawyer in general, you're probably not going to want to live in downtown Plattsburgh. You're going to want to live on either in Peru, okay, or Trafalgar, etc., Kelvin, some of those really nice houses. If they make that much money, they can afford to buy real estate and they want the equity. They don't want an apartment unless they're a single swinging guy, wants a nice apartment downtown. Matt, am I looking at you? I don't know if you're a single swinging guy or not.
I think that is a population that exists, young
is.
single executives. When I was in the
But if you
military
think
and I
about
had-
it, they're working at Bombardier. They need to drive to work, or they're working at Novabus and they
well,
need
except
to
for the
drive
people
to
who
work.
are, except for the people who are going to be working from home going forward, because
I
not
just-
everybody is going to. Anyway, it's I just
think
think the
we're-
transition that we're going to see of people working from home is going to be impressive.
I think we're, who knows? I mean, we are speculating quite a bit, but those are, I think, good questions. Just mentioning it's 7:30. If we want to do maybe another 20 minutes, half hour if we need it, but is there, I guess, more questions regarding parking or anything from Prime? Not to cut anyone off, but where's everyone at as far as questions?
I've had all the questions I've had answered. And actually, it was a very productive session.
Charlie, just one thing I wanted to mention, just to put it on the record. I know that since the zoning board didn't vote, we may be surpassing that 62-day limit after the public hearing. So I just wanted to make sure that the planning board and the applicant are on the same page, that we are planning to take action as soon as we can.
Sure. Yeah, we completely understand, and we gave the ZBA an extension to their July meeting. So I think they meet before this board in July.
Right.
Yes.
So, it would be our hope that the ZBA would take action at that meeting and allow this board to take action at their July meeting. One of the things that struck me, and I know special meetings are a lot easier now with Zoom, but if this board would like to see Steve's renderings and discuss them before a scheduled vote is to occur, or as you're going through the resolutions, because I believe the intent was some of you will be meeting with Dean and talking about the resolutions. And this is a very big topic of those resolutions.
Yeah, that was something I was going to bring up.
Okay. That was
And it's a decision, we'll have to make as a board if we want to have a special meeting. But yeah, if we do, I think it wouldn't be a pointless meeting, but it wouldn't be as fruitful if we don't have the renderings that we're looking for. Because I think that's one big part of finalizing the finding statement and the resolution. So
yeah, it sounds like a very productive conversation earlier.
I mean, Steve, I guess that's the question for you. How quick of a turnaround do you think? I mean, 2 weeks or a week or 3 weeks? What do you think you need?
Well, deadlines are good to create a sense of urgency. So when would you need it to have it in time?
Well, I guess then we go back to the board and say, would we like to have a special meeting maybe 2 weeks out, which would put us 2 weeks from now, 2 weeks prior to the next meeting, try to get the finding statement finalized. Obviously take a look at what's been given to us from Steve, and whatever Ethan, sends for parking.
So
and then
2 weeks from now is like Monday, 4th of July, Monday.
yeah. So how about the Wednesday of that week, maybe earlier in the day
I
or
can
something
do
like that?
Wednesdays. I can't do Thursdays at all anymore in the evening.
How did the 12 o'clock noon work for everyone?
On what date?
Say Wednesday, July 8th.
Should work.
Let's just let everyone check their calendars and see if that's available.
And that should be enough time, Derek?
Okay, thank you.
If
We can take that.
if I have it Tuesday, is that sufficient before?
Yeah, I think as long as you know, the day before, that gives everyone a chance to at least look at it, but we'll be obviously looking at it more thoroughly on the meeting and maybe having you kind of take us through.
Okay.
So does Wednesday, July 8th at noon, does that
Fine.
not work for anyone?
Works for me.
Let's see, do we have everyone?
I'm good with that, Derek.
Okay. Loretta, Reg,
Yeah, I'm good.
Kurt.
I've got a conflict, but I can work around it.
Okay. Loretta, you're good?
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry, Dean. The current executive order is through July 6th. If we held a meeting July 8th, do we have to have it at City Hall?
That's a good question. I haven't checked the executive orders at least today or yesterday, so I don't know if there's been a recent one extending the time frame. But yeah, that's a good point.
I think I can look into this as well. I believe that executive order to July 6th relates to the ability to do public hearings by Zoom. So I think as long as you're not having a public hearing, you should be okay. But I will also lend our services in making sure that everything's covered by executive order to the extent needs to be.
Okay, and then when it's not, then yeah, we'll have to deal with this in a larger issue because the council meetings have been all on Zoom. The zoning board's on Zoom. Every committee has been. So let's schedule for now tentatively. If there's an issue, we'll let you know.
Yeah, we can assume that will be a Zoom meeting, 12 o'clock noon on Wednesday, July 8th. If not, if something else changes, we'll have to move the location or see if we can still do the Zoom. Okay, so I think that's a good date to shoot for, and we should have everything we need as far as the questions that we've put forth today. So just again, to reiterate, the renderings from Steve showing, the stow brick on the wings, on all street fronts, and along the back, along the riverfront. What else am I missing? Anything else?
That was all I had, was just we narrowed it down to one issue. So I thank everyone. This was an incredibly productive meeting. It's probably not a coincidence that I didn't talk much. It was a productive meeting, so thanks everybody.
Thanks, Charlie.
Okay.
And Derek, in the meantime, I can work with our council to finalize all of the edits you guys made at the Friday meeting. I'll have that done by July 8th or before to send around to everybody.
Perfect. Yeah, because I think the things that were outstanding were pretty much just based on parking and the building materials. So
And some small details to fill in, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So
And
we
don't
can-
forget that each of you were supposed to read each of those resolutions for similar edits that would happen that are, piggybacking off of our.
right. Yeah, I think a lot of those we may be able to copy and paste right from the finding statements because it seems
Right.
like some of them are. So once we get the finding statement set, we can set the resolutions. Dean Schneller, as far as appointing liaisons to go through the resolutions, do we need to do that now or can we do that privately? I mean, through email?
Yeah, I mean, it's either way. It doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
I mean, it's a quick conversation, but email, it's I guess better for all just doing it right now, if you want to have that discussion right now.
Okay.
But it's good either way.
I was gonna say just email. It's easier if
Okay,
everyone's
that's
okay
fine.
with that.
Would the
Okay.
would the board mind letting the applicants know by say Thursday of this week who they intend to appoint to be the liaisons, just so we can start that process?
And this is so everyone understands, this is to have 2 liaisons from the board work with our legal counsel and the community development office to finalize the resolutions.
Correct.
Yep, and I'd say the word appoint is a bit too formal. I think it's just an informal way to expedite and use our time most efficiently. And again, no, they're not speaking for the board. They're just representatives that are going to help the process along. But again,
So-
it's always going to be the entire board that makes a decision.
How how is this different from us finalizing the finding statements as a board? I mean, it seems like a similar chore.
Process wise, yeah, it'd be less voices. I just want to make it clear that those two liaisons are not speaking on behalf of the board entirely, that there'd still be the public process in front of the entire board.
Okay. I guess I'm just wondering, I mean, is it any different than if we just did it with the finding statement at the same time during the meeting, or do we have to do liaisons
it
and
might be
resolution?
quicker to do it on the back end, back and forth. I mean, I can do like a first draft of the resolutions that matches the finding statements that you edited and send that around at least to the two liaisons, have them review it, make edits, and then we can send that around to the whole board. I just think it'd be a
Okay.
little bit quicker than having to go through the document, all 7 people looking at it.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary to walk word by word through the
Right.
document on the floor
Okay.
during a meeting.
I see.
That was overkill.
All right, well then right now, let's just do it right now. Would anyone like to volunteer themselves as a liaison?
I would love to, and I don't think they want me on it, but I'm volunteering.
I can't. I have no available time.
Okay, well, as acting chair, I guess I'll be the second, if that makes
Okay.
sense. Okay, so now you have your answer. Okay, well, I think that's pretty much it with Prime at this point, unless we have anything else. Okay.
I'd like to
Well, thank-
close Prime and maybe take a 5-minute break for people to run to the bathroom before we start the next 4 applications.
Okay, so we'll come back at 7:50.
Mm-hmm.
And we will start with item number 1, which is St. John's. So if they're listening, hopefully they're ready, 18 Broad Street. So thanks again, everyone from Prime. We appreciate it. And
Thank you.
we'll see you guys in a few weeks.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Night.
You're welcome.
Okay, out of acting board members or those that aren't alternates, the only one where it looks like we're waiting on is Reg. Give it a few minutes.
I'm an alternate on the rest of the agenda, correct?
I believe
You're an
Loretta,
alternate
you and Kurt are both alternates for the remainder of the agenda.
Okay. And
No, no, I believe, Loretta, I think you are sitting on St. John's. Reg needed to recuse himself.
Yeah, Loretta is the alternate for St. John's, while Reg has to recuse himself for that item.
Does he? Okay.
He is not recused for the other church.
Okay.
Peters. Okay.
And I don't know if we have any recusals on the other Court Street.
I had helped Nancy Woodward. She called me and I guided her with getting her own building permits passed off the index cards they have in the building inspector's office, etc. But I didn't help her with the application at all. I just sort of sent her on her way to figure out what she needed to do. So I don't think I need to recuse myself for having talked to her.
Okay. Any other recusals? Questions?
Well, I'm not a recusal, obviously. I just learned that I am going to need to get off to leave the meeting at about 8:30. I think I'm alternate on all of the remaining issues anyway, so I don't think that's a big deal. I apologize for having to leave early.
Okay. Thanks, Kurt. Okay, with that said, if Reg is recusing himself from the St. John's application, then we would have a full board here with Loretta stepping in for item number 1. We could get started. Dean, any question about that, Dean? Okay. Okay. Moving on to our next agenda item, which is Planning Board Application 2020-10. This is 18 Broad Street, St. John's Church. Request to reconstruct a heated handicap accessible ramp on the south side of the registered historic site known as St. John's Rectory at Zone C. Tax map parcel ID 207.19-3-17. The applicant is St. John's Church. Elena, maybe you can give us a brief overview of where we are with this application, which is a returning application from last month.
I sure can. Okay, so this project was in front of the planning board last month, but it was tabled because the board wanted additional information, including renderings, coordination with SHPO, and also confirmation that the ramp was ADA compliant. So again, this is a request to construct a permanent handicap accessible ramp on the south side of the St. John's Rectory. There's currently a wooden ramp that will be removed to construct the new concrete heated ramp. So this is a site overview. These are the same slides we did last month, but for the record, I'll just go through them really quickly. So this is the location of the property on the corner of Margaret, Broad, Oak, and Division Street. This is the zoning map showing the property is in the central business district. This is just a confirmation. This is the historic overlay is the yellow. This is just confirmation that the site is a registered historic site. Site photo from Margaret Street. This is the property here. Last month we said this is kind of a useless photo because you couldn't see it from Margaret Street. This is the Google 3D image. Here's the church here on Broad Street. And this is the rectory to the east, where the ramp will be installed on the Margaret Street side. This is the CRIS form. Let me see here. The next slide has an actual description of the rectory. Excellent condition, combination of colonial revival and Gothic revival style features. Also a good example of Quebecois architectural influence, which is rare to find outside of Quebec. So that is the historical significance of the building. Constructed around 1909. This is one of the original images submitted by the applicant. This is a picture of the porch. This is the center part of the porch where they're proposing to remove the bottom portion of that window and where the ramp will come in. This is the pictures of the existing ramp. These are the same images that you guys saw last month. This is the ramp to be removed. Again, same images you saw last month. This is the site plan for the proposed ramp at 5 feet wide with 3 separate landings. This is a new rendering that was sent to you this month. This is one of your requests. As you can see, it's sort of basically an elevated sidewalk at its base with the ground built up around it. They're showing the railings here in white, but that was just for contrast against the black and white photo. If the project is required to have railings on the ramp, they are proposing them to be the black wrought iron, which are similar to the railings you can see over on the church steps across the parking lot. Here's a picture of the railings as black. As you can see, the land up around the sidewalk would be built up. And there's technically not a need for railings. The project has coordinated with Joe in the inspector's office. He is our city ADA compliance officer. He reviewed the specs as submitted and did make a statement that railings were not required to be ADA compliant. In addition, SHPO did review this project. In the initial submission that I did through the CRIS system, SHPO provided a consultation letter that essentially said that they would prefer the applicant to not come into the building through the front facade of this porch. They thought it would negatively, impact the historic architecture facing Margaret Street, and preferred that the applicant, utilize the same entry that they're using now on the side of the porch. But unfortunately with Chris, there's not a lot of room to add additional narrative. So I asked Ray from JFP to coordinate directly with SHPO and give them a little bit more background information as to why they're proposing to put the ramp where they are. And he did do that, and SHPO, with that additional information, provided a second review letter that said they were okay with the ramp coming into the front of the building through that middle archway, as long as they did not use railings. So they suggested a simple sidewalk, elevated sidewalk with no railings. And like I said, Joe reviewed that proposal and said that it would meet ADA compliance without the railings as proposed. Let me see if I have any other pictures here. This is just an example of the railings that are used across the parking lot of the church, the black wrought iron. If the project is required to use them, this is something similar that they would use. This is the SHPO letter that I was just talking about. So this is the second review letter that they sent us. It just basically says, based on the review and the opinion of SHPO, that the proposed project will have no adverse effects to historic and cultural resources. So in addition, they encouraged the use of landscaping and other alternatives to eliminate the use of railings along the ramp, but also meet ADA compliance. This is an email included in here just so you guys could see for the record that Ray provided the specs for the ramp to Joe, and Joe did respond that based on those specs, it would meet ADA requirements. And that's it, that's all I have. So the project did provide a seeker part 1 that was reviewed along with supplemental information. This was determined to be an unlisted action. After we review the project and talk with the applicant, we can complete seeker part 2 together. So now I'd like to hand it over to the applicant to discuss with the board.
I think I'll leave it to Ray at the moment.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, we would prefer not to have railings as well as SHPO. We didn't feel they were necessary from the start, but they were brought up in the last meeting, so we decided, to put them in, and it basically gives you some aesthetics to see what's going on here. As I described in that email to Joe, we intended to have 3 to 5 feet of flat level surface with the ramp. and then grade away at probably a 3-to-1 pitch. So he agreed that there was no necessity. SHPO's concern, they wanted to go in the original entrance, which would have, we would have lost the original stair. And there would have been a significant amount of work. We would have to have retaining walls, which would have brought in materials that would have to be period correct. It was just, and it also would have blocked a bulkhead entrance into the basement directly adjoining. And in the end, SHPO's major concern was that the roof that we see here on the side for the temporary ramp and the ramp itself would be removed. And as soon as I agreed to that, he was 100% behind it. So another thing, had we gone to the original entrance, we would have had to have had an engineered roof system that could have withstood, you know, potentially several hundred pounds of ice falling off that upper roof. That was the reason for that temporary one being installed. So,
Ray, can we be assured, see, as you look at the screen door in this image, you know,
yes,
the inputting of the screen door, that if the screen and all that wood, any framing, et cetera, if that were all painted in a gray shade that were the same shade as the stone to make it blend, to make the whole thing blend, is that possible, or were you just going to stain it with a clear stain?
that is the one at the side entrance.
Yeah,
That
no,
was
I'm
done.
looking at the one that's proposed for the front, not the side.
Correct. What I'm telling you is that is a photo of
Yeah.
the one that was on the side.
Right.
So would you want them both to match and be turned gray as?
I just think gray makes them blend into the building more and be less obvious that we've installed a new door here in an old building. Does anybody know what I'm trying to say here is, can we get
Yeah,
this to
sure.
try to recede into the distance so that it isn't noticeable?
Yeah, that's not a problem.
I don't think, I mean, and actually if you use gray, you know, like a solid gray stain instead of paint, the stuff never wears off. Once every 10 years, they might have to stain it.
Yeah, I'm certainly not opposed to that.
I'm not opposed either, just the realization that those porch other bays are screened in as well, and they have the natural wood just like that door is currently. So it would mean doing all those too.
Well, look at them. They don't even show.
I know, but
Well,
they're
that's black and white.
is currently.
Yeah.
Melina, can you go back to the picture of where the current screen door is now? And just so we can see what that looks like in
Yeah.
color. Yeah.
Are they, what color? Is that wood color or red color? What is
Yeah,
that?
that is.
Wood color, just natural
That is
wood.
correct.
And it didn't fade to gray after a while?
I think there was probably some preservative or stain on it.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just trying to make everything that you've installed here blend into the background.
Yep, absolutely. And I would make note, there has been mention of this being the Margaret Street side. The actual physical address of the building is on the Margaret Street side. This is actually on the Broad Street side, which you cannot see from the street. That photo that you brought up, that was the Melina, I think you brought up the original, I think it was a Google Earth Street View. You can't see anything. I think that was one of the first shots where it was a kind of a useless photo.
Oh, when the leaves are actually out, you mean?
Yeah, like now I had to go in on the property in order to get a shot of the building because you can't physically see it from the sidewalk. But I mean, painting the door will not hold this up. I have no issue with that.
Ray, on the, I understand the determination that Joe made in terms of the handicap accessibility and the rails, and I do think those are in his jurisdiction primarily. The one question I had is just in terms of the gap between the ramp and the existing porch.
Yep.
That grading will be a little different than just 3-on-1, back, I believe.
That's gonna probably be a slight funnel
Okay.
back towards where you see the 22-foot dimension. It's
Okay.
just gonna funnel back that way pretty much as the current berm has it going now.
Okay. I mean, my only concern, once again, just in terms of a practical, if someone goes off that ramp, they're not going down into a hole.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
We can at least maintain 3 feet minimum of flat and still have pitch away from the building.
Okay. My second question is, I know as you develop your plans and you move into construction, Joe, I think made his written comment is that he believes that, railings won't be required.
Yes.
But if for some reason you got into the work and something was determined that, a railing was required, would you accept that this board, one of the things I thought was that we would simply say if it was required of the building department, that it somehow matches the existing railings on the church today?
And my response would be, which railings? There's like 5 different types.
I sort of saw that too. I was thinking the one in this picture in the distance, maybe.
Yeah, there's some twisted wrought. Those are big knot ball.
Okay.
I think we would go for a smooth rail, but the same color, same diameter. We just probably would not opt for those big knot fittings. This is the only one that has those. The rest are like you have twisted wrought iron with a finial cap on them. There's like 5 different styles.
Okay. I mean,
these are the closest to, but we would certainly, we were gonna go with 1.5-inch steel pipe, fish mouth, everything clean, smooth.
Okay.
That's what our intent was.
My goal is simply for the board to at least address it so that if for some reason in the building codes review, you ended up needing railings, you don't need to come back to us.
The only problem with that is SHPO didn't like the railings. So if we're going against, if we're going to give them some kind of provisional way to have railings, we're actually going directly against what SHPO is saying. So
well, SHPO did say that if there was a way that they were not necessary, they would prefer that route.
Yeah,
they weren't totally.
We generally prefer that too. Yeah.
Let's say this, Marissa. If for some reason railings were required by the building department, the applicant would have to obtain SHPO concurrence with their plan. But generally, they don't need to come back to us if they can get concurrence from SHPO.
And again, we're back to who's monitoring that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they'd really have to go back to SHPO though, Jim. I mean, their letter says that they encourage design if it meets the code requirements. So I would say if it doesn't meet code requirements without railings, then that's okay. Then they have to use railings. I wouldn't say that they'd have to go back to SHPO. I don't think they were really looking for that.
I'd feel better if we actually had the picture of the railings that we are going to approve.
Oh, okay, well,
which we don't have. We have the pipe and ball version, which I think is kind of interesting looking. But anyway.
So are you suggesting, Marissa, if there is for some reason any kind of condition with these railings, they come back to us?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Hate to leave it up to somebody else.
How does the board feel about that?
Stupid question, but why do we have to go by exactly what SHPO says?
You don't.
We don't, but we try to, right?
SHPO coordination was not required for this project.
Yeah.
Right. And it seems pretty kind of open what they're saying, that they prefer it, but they're okay with it either way. So I personally don't think that we should have them come back. I mean, there was another visual of pipes or the railings that were they emailed to us, or was there somewhere else in there? There was another First Church or something that was in there.
Yeah, that was an example where old meets new, right around the corner of First Church.
Do we have that,
There
Melina?
was new aluminum railings on the lower stairs. That was in the initial first package that was sent in that we looked at last month.
I do not have that as part of the PowerPoint, sorry.
But it was, you had the authentic period correct original ones up at the church. They were just a smooth pipe rail, top rail, mid rail with vertical posts, all smooth. And then the lower section was new aluminum with going level on the landings, 1 foot, and returning back to the post. Fairly typical modern style rail. But again, that was acting as a railing, whereas this would be a hand rail only. So two different animals.
I guess personally, I think the color is the most important thing. And if we know it's going to be black, then.
Yep, your typical black pipe rail, 1.5 inch pipe. All smooth, top rail, mid rail, vertical posts. No greater than, I believe it's 6 feet apart.
I agree with Eric. I could accept that.
In addition, and basically meeting the building department's requirements for handicap accessibility.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I don't have any other questions. Does anybody else on the board have questions or comments?
I think it's going to be an improvement. It'll look much more period-like than what the wooden frame roof and wooden ramp looks like. I appreciate the effort.
Thank you.
I do also. And it is nice, you know, especially for a structure of this character, that it's gone through SHPO, and actually SHPO had similar discussion and questions, maybe to arrive at an acceptance of the plan, but they had the same questions we had initially. So.
Yep, absolutely.
You know, with that said, we do have if there's no other questions or comments from the board, we do have a seeker in a public hearing associated with this, although I think we can review seeker first. So Melina, do you have a short form seeker?
I do, I'm pulling it up right now. Okay. So this is seeker short form for Planning Board Project 2020-10, 18 Broad Street, St. John's Church. As I said earlier, we did review and receive part 1 and determined this to be an unlisted action. So this is the Planning Board completing part 2. So question number 1 on part 2 is, will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulation? No or small impact may occur, or moderate to large impact may occur. So if I don't hear from anybody or nobody raises their hand, I'm going to check no or small impact may occur. Oops, what is this? Okay, close. Number 2, will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land? Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? Number 4, will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environment area, CEA? Number 5, will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway, sorry. Number 6, will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? Number 7, will the proposed action impact existing A, public-private water supplies, and B, public-private wastewater treatment utilities? Number 8, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? Number 9, will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna? And number 10, will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? And number 11, will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? Okay, and that's it for part 2. We just would need Jim's signature on that.
Okay. With the completed part 2, we still have a resolution, Milena?
We
Or a
do.
draft resolution. So I guess with the completed part 2 and no moderate or large impacts identified, you have a motion on the seeker.
I'll make the motion to accept the staff's recommendation. If we find no significant adverse environmental impact.
Okay, a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Derek. Roll call.
All right. Marissa Gilbert,
Yes.
Derek Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Rick Perry,
Yes.
Loretta Reedsma,
Yes.
Jim Abdullah.
Yes. Okay, moving on, we do have a public hearing associated with this application. I will open the public hearing to comment. Ethan, if you can let us know if there's anybody raising their hand or requesting to speak.
There is no one. The only 2 people in attendance right now are the next 2 applicants.
Okay. Well, if there's no one here to make public comment, then I'll close the public hearing and move to the proposed motion for the application that's been presented to us.
We have a pre-printed resolution, resolution number 2020-10B. But it incorrectly still mentions the Downtown Historic District, so I'm going to edit out those words. And replace them with, let's see, St. John's Rectory as a individually nominated historic site. Okay, some wording to that effect, not the Downtown Historic District. And also adding that we're required, well, again, according to the final submitted plans is probably somewhere in here. And also that they wood that's being added be either painted or stained gray to match the stonework.
Okay, so that's a motion by Marissa. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Rick. Any further discussion? If not, roll call.
Eric Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Rick Perry,
Yes.
Loretta Rietsma,
Yes.
Jim Abdullah,
Yes.
Marissa Gilbert.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You.
Thank you. I got bumped off my computer. I was sorry about that. You lost me for a while.
No problem. You came for the important part.
I pulled that up on my phone. I was like, oh, I got to get back to this.
Okay, so moving to the next application, this is Planning Board Item 2020-11, 114 Cornelia Street, St. Peter's Church. Request to install an exterior exhaust fan above a first floor window and install an infill panel behind the window as a result of the proposed interior renovations on the east side of a registered historic site known as St. Peter's Rectory, zoned R2, tax map ID number 207.15-6-34. Applicant is St. Peter's Church.
Melena, you're.
I'm muted, I know.
Are you muted?
Okay.
Okay.
So this project was in front of you guys last month as well, but was also tabled because you asked for additional information and alternative designs. So the project is back with those alternative designs. I'll go through the slides really quick because you did see them last month, but for the record, we'll review them again. So this is a site overview of the property on Cornelia Street, very large property, a large parking lot and green space along North Catherine Street, Elm Street, and comes out on Montcalm. Here is the zoning map showing the property is in the R2 residential district. This is the historic overlay map confirming the property is a registered historic site. And we have the CRIS form. We didn't have this last month, but thanks to Marissa and her hookup at the Historical Association, we were able to get this. So this is an image of the rectory, and I have some data here on the second slide. So this was constructed around 1878, I believe. And this form basically highlights the building as a school and nunnery from the late 1800s and serves as a great example of mansard style architecture. This is just a picture of the site from Cornelia Street. This is the rectory here next to the church. This is just a Google Earth image showing the church, the rectory, and then the parking lot in the rear. This is the initial floor plan that was submitted, showing the existing conditions and the planned renovations. As was stated before, most of this project is primarily interior renovations, including updating the kitchen, the laundry facilities, and the dining area on the first floor, and updating the living quarters upstairs and the bathroom. But some of the interior renovations will create the need to alter the exterior of the building, including one of the first floor windows. So this is an image of the exterior of the building. Initially, this project was proposing to actually infill this middle bottom first floor window. But obviously the board had some concerns about that due to the symmetry of the building, what that would look like. So the project is now proposing to put a vent above the window. I believe they're open to color schemes, so whether that matches the lintels above in that kind of brownish gray, or matches the brick color. You guys can have that discussion. But it will be centered over that middle window to create that symmetry. And they're actually proposing to leave the window now and place a board behind it, sort of creating that false window, but also closing it off from the interior so that they could do those interior renovations. This is just another image that was submitted by the applicant showing other existing exhaust fans on that same side of the building. I believe that's all I have for images. Yep. So the project did submit a seeker part 1 that was reviewed. It was determined to be an unlisted action, so we'll complete seeker part 2 together. Other than that, I will hand it over to Ray.
Okay, one thing we did find, I reached out to you, but it was a little too late. You were already putting things together, Melina. And reviewing the Chris forum, Father Kevin actually brought this up to me. The building they're describing as the rectory on entry 97 on the Chris forum is actually the building across the street. It's across South Catherine, the mansard roof, the dormers, the coin corners. That is not this building. But the picture of the building is a reverse exposure. That photo, it appears like you're taking a picture to the northeast. You're facing northeast. But the porches that you see on the side there, those are actually on the opposite side of the building. So those were.
So the negative was flipped when they made the print?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That was a little confusing to us, but then the description is definitely the building across
I
the
was
road.
gonna say, man, that doesn't look like a mansard roof.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that the description of the use of the building is the same though, correct? Or is
That is not
accurate?
correct either. The use of the building,
Really?
not the other building.
They're talking about the Duville Academy building next door,
How did
across the
that
street.
happen?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I don't know what the answer is because
Can you see that?
it's clearly on the register. Does anybody in the church have any idea when that brick building was built?
It was actually built before the academy because the Oblates invited the sisters in, and that's how the convent got built and the school. So it was pre-existing of the other building. But again, our building, the rectory in which we live, has had several changes over the course of its history, including that entire addition off the backside, the addition of a garage at one point, and the garage got removed in order to put the new Emmaus room on, which happened 2 pastors ago. So this building has seen quite a bit of change, and everything that was written up on the historical aspect or the architectural aspect has no bearing whatsoever on this building.
That's funny.
I can see at the bottom of the Chris statement, they're quoting, it says the 1899 industrial edition, but it's actually the 1897 industrial edition, which is available at the Historical Association. Available, was reprinted in like 76 by Cornerstone Books. So they're getting the information out of a publication from 1897. So clearly somebody's been confused since 1897.
Larissa, I'm friends with Father John Yankovic. I could ask him because he did an awful lot of research.
Sure.
On the church when he was putting on the new roof.
Right.
And then of course, when he was putting together the Emmaus room. So I'll just ask him just out of curiosity.
Yeah, because
what the
that
background
clearly
is
that
there.
description on the Chris form that they're pulling up from the 18.
Yeah, no, it's the building next door.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'll ask him and get back to you on it.
It makes me actually want to look at the Chris form for the Duville Academy in case somehow they've got the descriptions are reversed. Anyway.
So minus that clarification on some of the history, I don't see any reason why we still can't consider this application.
No,
as-
it's an improvement over the info. This is, yeah.
Just for a better understanding, I intended to get a panel of 3/4 inch MDO board. We'll paint it a very light gray to put against the exposure to the exterior. And I have enough wall thickness cavity to have a 6-inch insulated wall infill on the inside and still leave the window intact. Worst case scenario, we discussed in the event that we develop gases or moisture, I'll drill some small weep holes at the bottom of the sash to allow it to escape.
Yes.
Other than that, I don't foresee any issue.
Okay. As far as the, I guess one of the other comments that Melina touched on real briefly was the, whether the board felt there was a specific color for the vent.
Yes, we're certainly open to any color you want. We're not gonna let that hold up this whole job.
I'm happy with the way it looks now. I mean, as long as it's not silvery, okay.
Right. A
Some
nice
kind of
neutral.
a matte color. It looks fine as it is. I don't think it needs to be red, but if you could get it in a color that matched the brick, that would be nice. But I think it's going to be tough.
Yeah, well, we can certainly paint it,
Yeah.
We could get a matching color.
I sort of like the idea of trying to match the gray color of the window header instead of trying to seeing that brick has an awful lot of looks like white looking mortar,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
agree.
that light tan earth tone.
Yeah, the putty color I like.
Yep,
Yeah.
certainly. I can personally make sure that happens.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else on the board have any other comments or questions? If not, we again do have a short form seeker associated with this application. Elena, maybe if you can guide us through that, the part 2.
You know how I love reading these questions over and over again? Okay, so this is the seeker part 2 for planning board project number 2020-11, 114 Cornelia Street, St. Peter's Church. Again, we did review seeker part 1 and the supplemental information, determined this to be an unlisted action. So now we'll complete seeker part 2. So number 1, will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulation? Number 2, will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land? Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environment area? Number 5, will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? Number 6, will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? Number 7, will the proposed action impact existing A, public-private water supplies, B, public-private wastewater treatment utilities? Number 8, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? Number 9, will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna? And number 10, will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? And lastly, number 11, will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? Okay, so that completes seeker part 2.
But you're muted, Jim.
Thank you. So I believe we also have a draft resolution for seeker finding.
We do resolution number 2020-11A, which needs to have a few changes because of our changes. So I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution 2020-11A with the following changes. I'll just read the amended first paragraph. Whereas the City of Plattsburgh's Planning Board has before it a project known as 114 Cornelia Street, St. Peter's Church. It's a request to block off on the interior with, was it MDF? I got the right?
MDL.
MDL. Okay. As a product. And to insert a small centered vent over the window. And it's part of proposed interior renovations of St. Peter's Church Rectory, which is part of a National Register site. So those couple of changes need to happen in that first paragraph. Otherwise, the tax map parcel, the applicant, et cetera, and the plan preparer and all the whereases are correct. The final paragraph being that we find a notice of no significant environmental impact.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Derek. Roll call.
Rick Perry,
Yes.
Reg Carter,
Yes.
Jim Abdullah,
Yes.
Marissa Gilbert,
Yes.
Derek Rosenbaum.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. We do have a public hearing again with this application, so I will move to open the public hearing. And Ethan, let us know, is there anyone?
No,
looking to speak?
No.
the same two people are the next two applicants.
Okay. If there's no one looking to make public comment, I'll close the public hearing and move to board consideration of a motion for the application as presented.
I'd like to make a motion, resolution number 2020-11B, echoing the paragraph changes that were in our seeker motion, the same wording, amending the original proposed motion, granting the right to make these modifications to the building.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Reg. Roll call.
Jim Abdullah,
Yes.
Marissa Gilbert,
Yes.
Derek Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Rick Perry,
Yes.
Reg Carter.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Definitely thank you both for considering our comments with both of these applications. You came back with great proposals, and just thank you very much for coming back.
Well, thank you.
Good night.
No, we would like to mention that the CRISP form, you will be looking at that because we potentially have some additional exterior work, particularly in the front entrance is a possibility. So we're probably going to want accurate description of the building.
That would be a submission to SHPO. I would think you would have to write to the person at SHPO and say, we're looking at our CRISP form and we've just discovered this whole paragraph is talking about the building next door. Oops, Shaliz has left. And they can perhaps see what else is in the file. Okay. You know, maybe. Also at the Historical Association, we have copies of all the original work that went into the submissions and everything. So maybe we can pull out that building section of what we have for information to see where it just got messed up when it got submitted, because all SHPO has done is scan those original documents from like 76 or 82.
Yep,
It's
absolutely.
the original documents. And so you need to plead your case with them to get it fixed.
Yep, all right. That's good follow-up information. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
You too.
Okay. Moving on to planning board item number 2020-12, 119 Court Street. This is a request to replace asphalt shingles with new architectural asphalt shingles in the Court Street Historic District, zoned RH, tax map parcel ID 207.19-5-3. The applicant is Nancy Woodward.
Okay, so this is a seeker review, public hearing, and historic site review. Again, this is a request to replace deteriorating asphalt shingles with new architectural asphalt shingles in the Court Street Historic District. This is an overview map of the property. This is 119 Court Street between Wells and Williams Street. This is a zoning map showing the property is in the Residential Historic District. This is the historic overlay map confirming the property is within that district. And here's the CRISP form. That's not The building was originally constructed in 1865 and is a contributing structure as a prime example of simple Italianate architecture. Here's an image of the photo from Court Street. This is a Google Earth image. I chose this image because you can it's a good angle to show the low pitch of the roof, which is a good thing because you can't really see it from Court Street. This is just an applicant provided image, sort of an overview of the existing roof layout. This is a document the applicant provided. It's images of abutting properties that also have asphalt shingles in the Court Street Historic District.
We have some mixed up stuff there. 122 Brinkerhoff. I'm not sure if that's the right address, but that's the Harris house. And yeah, see the names where it says Jeffrey Lattenville owns that particular house?
Yes.
That's actually Donald and Dolores Harris's
Oh,
house.
I see.
So I
these
don't
are
know if the
switched.
numbers are mixed up or the people are mixed up, but
Right.
something's mixed up there. Okay.
Well, the intent of this was to show that there's other asphalt
Right.
shingles in this district.
Yeah.
This is an image the applicant also provided. This is the rear of the property. And this is a close-up image of the deteriorating shingles. You can see they're in pretty bad shape. I believe the roof was last replaced in 1996, so almost 25 years ago. We do have the original documentation as part of your packet. And this is a picture of the shingles that are proposed. I think that's all that I have. Yep. So I didn't really have any comments for this. Obviously, the roof needs replacing, and it's been asphalt at least since 1996. I'm not sure, if before that the roof had been replaced since the original slate. But I'll hand it over to the applicant now to answer any questions you may have.
Yes.
Oh, it's actually Paula speaking for her mother.
I'm here, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, can you see me or can you just hear me?
I hear you, but
Okay, we're here. We see you. I think I got kicked off when we switched over, but we've been with you the whole time.
Can I,
So-
Milena, can I ask you a question? Are these architectural shingles the ones that we've, in a sense, already blanket approved for the Vilas home and for various other projects where we decide that that particular shingle that we'd already approved looks enough like slate so that we're okay with it?
I don't know if there's a blanket approval, but these are very similar to the ones, yes.
Okay.
But Marissa, I don't think these shingles are like the Vilas home. These are an architectural shingle. I don't think they're the slate look type shingle.
There was a project we recently just heard that wasn't Vilas home that looked like slate. Which one was that?
Last one that I saw that installed that type of shingle was the Maple Fields over on the oval.
That's what it was. No, it wasn't. It was near the Maple Fields, though. It was the other project we just heard on the base. The IBEW.
IBEW used real slate.
Yeah.
They had real slate.
Yeah, it was a slate.
Was
I think it was
Legal Aid Society?
Yes.
Yes, legal aid.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what it was.
What did they use?
It was an asphalt shingle, I believe, that looked like slate.
There we are.
But they're just replacing asphalt shingles with asphalt shingles?
Right, right.
Okay.
And they're trying to make it look nice. So is it the, when we're looking at this stacked image, is it the upper section, we'll call it the green labeled section that we're looking at? What is being proposed, or the light blue section?
The top one.
The top one. Okay.
Yes, we compared it to actual slate, and this is the one that most closely matches it in color.
It looks fine to me. And again, as the low roof pitch means you really can't even see the roof. It doesn't show up in the Chris system photograph because of the pitch.
No, you aren't able to see the roof.
From the street. Yep.
Marissa, I don't know. I didn't find anything in that Chris system that actually even referenced what the roof's
It wasn't mentioned.
material was.
Yeah, wasn't mentioned.
So, my only other question, this is a roof replacement for the whole building, porches included?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so it's all roof sections.
There you are. We can see you now.
Are the new shingles the same color as the old shingles?
Well, close. The old shingles are pretty wrecked, so it's hard to tell. But yeah, I mean, they would both be trying to match slate.
Thank you.
That roof you're looking at was put on 17 years ago, and it was IKO shingles, which didn't hold up well.
Okay, does anybody else on the board have comments or questions? If not, we do have a short form seeker associated with this project. Elena, if you can
I'm working on it.
guide us through that.
Elena, I think you could say question 1. Everybody's looking.
You know,
at the same form. Why?
We asked that at the last meeting, and Mark Shackner advised us to actually read every question.
Okay. Go for it.
Okay, I'll have them memorized in no time.
Yes.
Okay, so this is seeker part 2 for planning board project number 2020-13. Oh, I'm sorry, 2020-12, 119 Court Street. So question number 1, will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulation? Number 2, will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land? Number 3, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? Number 4, will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a CEA? Number 5, will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? Number 6, will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? Number 7, will the proposed action impact existing public-private water supplies? B, public-private wastewater treatment utilities? And number 8, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? Number 9, will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna? Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? And number 11, will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? And that completes secret part 2.
Okay, with the completion of part 2 with no significant impacts identified, we do have a draft seeker resolution that's been prepared by staff. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make that motion, the resolution 2020-12A, but including the actual pinnacle pristine high performance architectural shingles in the color of, is it Hearthstone?
Yes.
Yeah. Just get that phrasing into this motion and into the actual final motion as well.
Marissa, I'm sorry, just to interject. As far as resolutions go, anything that you add, we can add in that last section called discussion, because one of the conditions of approval is that the project complies with any discussion items from the planning board. So instead of amending the actual resolution language, we can add that to the discussion section.
Does discussion become a condition?
Yes. Yep. It's one of the conditions.
Okay. So then I'm adding discussion that the architectural shingle must be, again, I just had it and now I've lost it. A pinnacle pristine high performance architectural shingles in the color of Hearthstone. And that, as the final paragraph, of course, is that we have a notice of no significant environmental impact.
Okay. Do I have a second? Second by Rick. Roll call?
Reg Carter,
Yes.
Jim Abdullah,
Yes.
Marissa Gilbert,
Yes.
Derek Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Rick Perry.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, we have a public hearing associated with this application. I'll move to open the public hearing. Ethan, anybody here other than the one last application?
Nope.
Okay. If there's no further comment from anybody, I'll close the public hearing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we still have one more. We still have one more vote.
Okay.
With the site application as presented. And I just wanted to clarify based on our discussion earlier of the application about any kind of standard shingles we've previously. I think we've had a number of different types of shingles come before us. You know, these are architectural shingles, but I think the shingles, Marissa, that you were referring to, like on the Vallis home, are actually an Owens Corning brand shingle.
Mm-hmm.
Just to clarify the record.
Okay.
With that said, we do have the application as presented, and we have a draft resolution prepared by staff. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2020-12B, also including the type of shingle that was included in the seeker resolution.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Marissa. Roll call.
Jim Abdullah,
Yes.
Marissa Gilbert,
Yes.
Derek Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Rick Perry,
Yes.
Reg Carter.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Thanks. Okay. Moving to planning board item 2020-13, 120 Court Street. It's a request to replace wooden clapboard and shake style siding with vinyl clapboard and shake style siding in the Court Street Historic District, zoned RH. It's a tax map parcel ID 207.19-1-6. The applicant is Charles Grimshaw.
Melina, muted. Okay.
Okay, so as Jim said, this is a request to replace two types of existing wood siding with vinyl siding in the Court Street Historic District. This is an overview of the site right across the street from the project we just reviewed. This is 120 Court Street, again in between Wells and Williams Street. The zoning map, again showing the project is in the RH district, residential historic. The historic overlay map confirming the property is within the Court Street Historic District. And this is the CRIS form for the property. So it was constructed circa 1905 and is a prime example of simple colonial revival architecture. This is a site photo from Court Street. This is another close-up image of the house. You can see the wood siding on the front facade. It's kind of cool. You can see on the top floor here, the wood siding actually arcs around this Palladian window. So one of my comments when I was reviewing it was just a question for the applicant if the proposed vinyl siding would also mimic this arch that currently exists, because that is kind of a cool feature. Let's see. Lastly, this is an image that the applicant provided of the proposed siding. This is for the wood clapboard siding. It is a vinyl wood grain siding in the color Vermont maple, which is sort of similar to the paint color that exists now. And this is an example of what they're proposing to replace the shake style siding. It's a shingle style vinyl in the color mahogany. I believe that's all I had for pictures. So now I will hand it over to the applicant to talk about their project with you. I believe we have Mr. Charles Grimshaw with us to answer any questions you have.
Hello, we were muted, so
Hi.
hi,
No problem.
Charlie and Juliet.
Okay.
So-
thank-
What questions do you have?
I think we just need to talk about it.
So as far as the arch on the front, that will be, it's going to be kept in that same style. Yes, I do. I agree. I do like that as well. So
We wanted to keep the colors, neutral, similar to how they are now. And we definitely are going to mimic the same patterns with regards to the shake and the clapboard on the house. So in keeping with that kind of colonial architecture, we definitely want to preserve, and with the fencing that we put up last year, I think it's, we definitely want to preserve the Victorian look. It's really important to us to be consistent with that.
Mhm.
And we know that, it definitely needs attention, the wood siding. So
there's a lot of dry rot, especially in the shakes. It's curling. There's a lot of some areas where it's needed attention for many years now, and it just hasn't been given any. So that's the reason why we're doing this.
and the siding has sort of the wood grain look too.
I've actually worked with this kind of siding, this actual brand of siding before, and it does have a very strong, it does have that wood grain appearance to it. You can't really even tell it's vinyl until you're like right up to it. So it's a pretty high quality. I've had pretty good, I like it. It's good stuff. So.
Any questions from the board?
Can I just bring up, okay, in terms of board history on letting someone put siding on something in a historic district, we allowed Dick Glode to replace siding with siding at, I think it was 84 Court Street, a non-contributing property in that district, which had siding on it when it went onto the register as a non-contributing property. And Steve Fuller at 121, kind of across the street, it's a duplex, came before the board and asked for permission to put siding on that building. I don't know, 8 years ago, a while ago, I don't recall. And the feeling was no siding on buildings that weren't sided already, no vinyl siding. So if the board decides to make this decision to allow siding in a historic district on a building that isn't currently already vinyl sided, it's a big step in another direction. And I'm just I'm just telling you that you need to really think about the decision before you go in that direction.
What about Steve Tay's building? Did we decide to allow vinyl on wood there?
Steve Tay, where was that?
Brinkerhoff,
69 Brinkerhoff.
69 Brinkerhoff.
a few months ago.
I might have missed that meeting. In the lower, is it in the lower Brinkerhoff
Yeah, it's just
section?
It's just east of North Catherine.
I think I missed that meeting. I don't remember Steve Tay as an applicant at all.
In that situation, there was some concern about setting a precedent, and I think the criteria was that he had attempted to repaint that building numerous times and had been unable to. The wood literally wouldn't hold the paint, and that was the distinction which allowed this board to make that variance different decision.
The board required him to submit a written statement that he had attempted to paint it several times and it would not hold the paint. We actually just received that statement over the weekend.
And I do believe there was also some discussion in the review of the CRIS form, the actual significance of that building. And I believe my recollection is it was somehow defined as like a workforce housing with lesser historic significance. I mean, that's not the correct word. That's not the correct word, but that was how the form actually discussed it. So there were a number of factors in that consideration. You know, with that said, Marissa, you know, this is a very nice home. It seems to be well maintained. I mean, from the outside, it looks like it maintains its historic character.
The pictures are not doing any justice as far as what is really, if you look at the siding right now, I mean, it's the siding needs to be replaced, especially the shakes. And I mean, I don't know, it's just, and one, the house next to us, which is 116, 118, they have a mixture of vinyl and aluminum siding.
I mean, we're trying to do something super tasteful with it.
Yeah, we're
not surrounded by tasteful, you know, buildings.
Yeah,
you know,
we're surrounded by college housing, and you know, we're just trying to make, you know, without, because I mean, I'm not getting any younger, and you know, a house of this size to have it painted is quite a bit of money, and right now, I don't think paint alone is just going to do it. It's going to need replacing, especially, like I said, the shakes. They are beyond that state. I mean, I'm sure they're probably the original stuff that was on when the house was built, really. I mean, they're just so, and there's actually holes in the corners where I had to fill with spray foam because of insects getting in. So, I mean, we're just trying to make it, you know, I understand, you know, the vinyl thing with the historic thing, but I think what we're doing is tasteful in nature, and I think it's going to be a huge improvement of what it is right now. And I don't think I think it's going to enhance the appearance, if anything. You know, it's just my feelings.
Have you painted it before?
It was painted by the previous owners. We just bought this house 3 years ago in 2017. It was painted, I believe, 10 years ago. If I'm not mistaken. Richard Tucker is the previous owner.
Okay. And just a
Do you
question.
need to replace the trim around the windows?
I'm not. I was going to use this pine and just fur it out around the windows. So the vinyl, like for your J channel, when it goes around the windows, it's going to be flush with the outside of the trim.
Okay, so just butt up against that.
I'm sorry, what?
It'll butt up against the frame around the windows on the second.
I'm
floor.
going to put another, I'm not gonna actually replace them. I'm gonna be putting another layer, I guess you could say, around with a trim. And I'm just gonna put the foam board, like a 1/4-inch foam board, because you do need a flat surface when you put your vinyl siding down and fur it out.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just a question on the arch, since you mentioned that. Is that where the vinyl shakes are going to be?
Yes.
And can you describe how you're going to be able to achieve that arch? I guess I'm just wondering how that will come out.
Instead of using J channel, I'm going to use it's just a composite board, cutting it to shape, cut it. I'm just going to get the wide piece of composite, cut it the arch, route out a chamfer around the outside of the arch, and the vinyl will fit behind that chamfer.
Okay. But the vinyl itself won't be arched. It'll be going straight across.
Oh, you're talking about the actual vinyl. Yeah. Yeah.
So just the trim will be arched, but not the actual siding.
Okay. I misunderstood what you're saying now. Yeah. Okay. I misunderstood what she was saying earlier.
Okay.
As far as doing that, that's a good question. I might not be able to do that then. You're right. I misunderstood what she was talking about earlier. Because we had talked about that as well, actually, about trying to do that, but it's not going to be possible with the vinyl siding.
Right.
Have you looked at the alternative in the last 3 years of actually, evaluating your different issues with the existing siding and, cost to repair?
The siding has actually taken a big turn for the worse in the last year or so, year and a half. When we first moved into this house, it was actually in pretty good shape, as far as like the paint, it's everything. But it seems like, I don't know if things were touched up before we bought it or what, but we're noticing a lot of decay and a lot of rot since we moved in, especially like around the front areas.
Okay. And have you, aside from identifying it, had a contractor go around and look at repainting?
I do my
He
own.
essentially is a contractor.
I do. I've built 3 houses. I have over 30 years experience in building.
Yep. Any ideas on the difference between, what you're proposing and
as far as what? No.
And repairing, or painting?
It's going to be, as far as cost wise, it's going to be extraordinary. As far as to replace all the shakes with, real shakes, and all the decayed siding with new clapboards, and then repaint the whole house again. It's going to be a tremendous amount of work and a tremendous amount of money compared to vinyl. And I think it's going to look, because right now we have areas where there were windows at one time and they were filled in, so you can see the seams where the clapboards were filled in where the window was. There's areas like that. Those are all going to be eliminated with the vinyl.
Bees are getting in.
Yeah, we have wasps that are nesting right inside the walls because they're getting inside of in between the shakes. And just recently this spring, I just noticed a big hole in one of the outside corners. I filled with spray foam to keep the insects out because they were making a nest in there. So it's just one thing that after another, and it just needs to be taken care of as quickly as possible, because every day that goes by, it's just getting worse.
Okay. Does the board have any other questions, comments?
Can we
Okay.
go back to the slide that shows the architectural significance? The crisp form that,
Anything specific, Rick, you would like
no,
right out?
no, I just wanted to see the nature of the request versus the historic significance.
I'm sorry, I thought I asked a question. Jim, I'm an alternate. Would it be appropriate for me to make any comments here? And it's fine if I shouldn't, I get it.
Dean, any reason why not?
You should ask. I don't think you were a part of that executive session last few days ago.
Okay.
So the long and short of it is, it's generally not recommended because if an alternate speaks, it creates an Uber board, which is potentially creates some legal liability. That being said, if there is something that an alternate can bring to the table and with the chair's discretion, I think we're trying to create some ability for that alternate to voice a question or concern, but in a very limited capacity.
And I was at that meeting, so yes, that's why I'm asking if,
Okay, I mean, so I guess it would.
I just have a question.
Yeah, if you have a limited question. Laura?
Yeah, just that having done the same thing on my house, having confronted the same issue, and for us, heat loss, in addition to the paint, was a big issue. And is there have you projected or gotten any information about how this is going to help insulate your house?
Well, just by, well, for one thing, I am going to be putting 1/4-inch foam board or underneath the vinyl siding. That itself right there is add, some amount of R value, of course. And just the vinyl siding alone, I mean, it's going to stop, a lot of air, airflow going through, as this as a barrier itself.
Thanks.
Okay.
That was my experience. So I was just wondering if that was part of your consideration.
Well, that is one of my concerns. Yes, as well. True.
Okay. Well, back to Marissa's original comment about vinyl siding and board consideration. I will say in my time on this board, since I believe 2011, 2012, I have struggled with historic applications, and this would be a classic application where truly our standards that we are supposed to go by, the guidelines for preserving historic rehabilitations, restoring and reconstructing historic buildings, really do not give us good basis for what to do with an application like this. Truly, I identify with the people of these districts trying to maintain their homes and to propose more, I guess, period appropriate materials or current materials that are affordable. On the flip side, the standards that we have in the zoning ordinance really don't address that. especially if they haven't, especially if in some time before it came to this board, they haven't been changed over or been done in the past. With that said, it's the, I don't know if anybody else on the board has questions or comments.
I just had one question on the shakes. Have you considered any other style of shakes rather than the really weathered looking ones?
We have not considered, but that's definitely an option.
That's just a personal thing. So I don't know if anyone else has that same question, but I didn't know if you were, that was the only one you had looked at, or if you had considered others.
No, we haven't really looked at others, honestly. This is the style that, that this vendor carries. And, I'm sure we could find, if there was an issue with that, as far as if they're that weathered looking and that's a problem, I'm sure we could find another alternative. I don't know.
It's not really my place, but I'll ask it anyway. Has this board ever considered kind of is it always all or nothing in the past? Or is there a scenario where you've identified that there's certain historical elements, such as the third floor, but then the other lesser, the lower floors, which don't necessarily have that historical element, could have some more flexibility?
I think what's happened mostly is, say someone had a problem at the very rear of the house and they were replacing something that was not visible from the street, then that in a sense was not as much of a problem because it wasn't the street view. But the whole vinyl siding thing, it's just when you read all the pamphlets that come from the government about, vinyl windows versus wood windows, trying to fix rather than replace. And if you're going to replace, please replace in kind. And we have every time we make one of these motions, railings, I can't remember, down on the bottom of Hamilton Street, I think somebody had rot in their clapboard and needed to replace their clapboard. The Cantelord House, we needed to replace their clapboard. It was all like with like. And I almost think, I hate to say it, but I know this person wants to get the work started and everything if he can, but I almost think the board needs to go back and do some rereading in these historical pamphlets about what's appropriate. And there's a little bit of buyer beware involved here, where this district and all of its legal restraints have been in place since, this has been on the district since 76 or 82. It's on the CRIS system. So I just feel like this could be addressed without going with vinyl siding.
Can we clarify, is this not on the historic register?
This is on the register. It's on the register, a contributing property in a registered district.
Okay. The question's been, it's in a historical zoning district, which doesn't necessarily mean it's in a historical
forget
district.
that. That's how many people can live in the house. That's nothing to do with this board. It's an overlay district where multiple properties have, so the district itself was nominated and then has contributing properties. And this is a contributing property, as opposed to 84 Court, which was a non-contributing property.
Gotcha.
How about 116, 118 Court? Is that a contributing property?
What's it look like? The address doesn't mean anything.
It's a housing complex, but
It's Kimball
it's Kimball
Apartments.
Apartments.
Kimball Apartments, actually, the thing is, it got onto the register before, it looked like this. It had already been cited, I believe, when it went on the register. That is the original Champlain, the hospital. Do you realize that? That's the hospital.
Yes, I do know.
Before they
I do
built
know.
the hospital. Okay. And then
But
additions and everything were put
It
on.
has like 3 different types of siding on it.
I know, but if they all went on before it was nominated, okay? And again, nominated probably more for its history than for its outside appearance at the moment.
Mhm. I'm sorry. I'm just, it's just the replacing. I would love to replace this with the clapboard, but the cost of replacing the clapboard and the shakes and the paint as well, you're talking $20,000 probably, if not more.
And another piece I'm just gonna say is like, we're both in our 50s, we, are planning to live in the city,
And I
in
know-
this home. And we're not getting any younger, and we're the type of resident, I think, we're gonna be, we walk downtown, we go to the farmer's market when there's not COVID going on. We go down, we are planning to retire here, but it's really, it needs to work for us too. And, because it's just, it's too much maintenance.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, and I would even be willing, if like somebody else had just mentioned earlier, as far as maybe compromise a little bit. Maybe we could do, if you would go for this, if we could do the vinyl on the clapboard areas, and I could just replace the shakes and paint that. If we could do that, I'd be good with that. And I could actually, in that way, in that aspect right there, I could keep it, the exact, with the arch, with the shakes on top in the front. I mean, we could do that.
Well, that goes back to Dean, your partial consideration of alternatives between.
I mean, if it
floor
was
and
that or nothing, I would go for that. I mean,
Anybody on the board have a question or comment?
I mean, the only thing I can think of was the most recent thing with Steve Tay, and if the only reason not to do it is because of precedent, we broke precedent with him. And I understand precedent. I've been on the board a lot less time, but I don't think you should continue doing something if it's not correct just because of precedent. I'm not saying this is correct or incorrect. I don't want to be bound by that if it's just going to stymie things that really should be moving forward.
we're just trying to make our house, more presentable, more, and we are trying to keep it with the Victorian style. We're not trying to do some wild thing or anything like that. I mean, we love it. That's the reason we're attracted to this house in the first place, is because of the style. But there are some issues that are developing, and
I think there's also sort of you have to kind of balance making something sustainable for people to live in the city, with taxes being what they are and everything. I mean, we have to sort of make this work, we want to be the type of like Plattsburgh residents that are, utilizing downtown and, all of that. I mean, that's sort of the trend in cities, is people are sort of retiring into these walking communities. And that's kind of a good resident to have. So, it's got to work for us too, I mean, it's got to be sustainable for us in our future. And I think that's kind of the balance that you have to strike here when you're looking at this. And it is a little funny because we do have a house that's college housing over here to the right of us that's got graffiti on it, I mean, that just never goes away. And so, I understand the historic standard that our house is being held to. But at the same time, I think we kind of have to be a little bit realistic and, is it going to help us maintain the integrity of the home itself, And yes, it will, because it's an affordable way for us to make it look really nice and to preserve it.
You mentioned 20,000. You gave that number as having to replace the clapboard. What's the cost?
That's just a figure I just pulled out of my head. Well, I know that Dick Heckard told me it cost him over $10,000 to have the house painted that was approximately 10 years ago.
And but do you know the cost of what you're planning on doing with the vinyl?
When?
No, the cost.
Oh, what's the cost of the total cost right now is going to be probably right around $5.
That's with your own labor?
Yes.
That's you providing your own labor. You're doing it yourself. You're doing it yourself.
That's right.
In terms of the alternatives, I don't know whether thoughts of the board or Dean, would you be willing to work through like a SHPO review of this to vet the alternatives and come to a conclusion on a plan? I'll be honest with you, the applicant or the material we have that our zoning ordinance references, I mean, we would just have to ignore it, basically, in my reading of it, to simply just approve the application as presented. With that said, I do identify with what your application is trying to do and trying to accomplish. The Historic Preservation Office, as you heard in the previous applications, has been one way for us to, I guess, bridge that duties of the board with, what can be balanced out with the applications or what the applicant is looking to accomplish. I don't know if the board has any other comments to that. I don't know if the applicants have any comments or questions about that, but.
I would feel more comfortable. I hate to say it. We're going to postpone this for a month, get a SHPO opinion. I wouldn't even feel comfortable doing the seeker because I think the answer on seeker would be a negative.
So I don't know if you have any questions in regards to that review. Planning department can help you file the application.
Yes, we can submit everything to SHPO for you.
And Milena, it looks like the short form seeker wasn't completely filled out. Not all the questions are answered.
I'll have to take a look at that, but I thought I reviewed it.
Okay.
Again, I'm questions from the board, comments or applicant, if you have any questions.
Oh, is there anything required of us with the SHPO review, or do you need us to do something?
Something that might be helpful would be close-up pictures of any of the rock that you referenced.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay. Everything else I should have.
Okay.
And going through that will help assist this board to make more informed decision.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the board in regards to the application? Okay. If not, then we would propose to table the application so that you can come back at the in next month if you get your comments. Milena, I would assume as long as we get comments prior to the meeting, they can come back to the meeting.
Correct. I will try and submit everything to SHPO by Friday of this week. Turnaround is at most 30 days, but SHPO has been pretty quick. With the last project we submitted, it was like maybe 2 weeks. So we should have everything before our next meeting.
Okay.
Elena, Is there any historic preservation funds out there?
There are some tax credits that are available to homeowners. I can look into that and send some information to the applicant
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea.
because they are in the registered district, so I believe they would be eligible.
Yeah. Help defray some of the cost.
Okay, if there's no other comments or questions, can I have a motion to table the application?
I'll make a motion to table the application.
Okay, motion by Rick, second.
Second.
Second by Reg.
I heard Reg first.
Okay, second by Reg. Roll call.
Marissa Gilbert,
Yes.
Eric Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Rick Perry,
Yes.
Reg Carter,
Yes.
Marissa Gilbert,
Yes.
or Jim Abdullah. Sorry.
Okay, one moment. If I'm the who, I'm sorry, can you repeat that roll call again? Who's recused on that? Was there four? Am I the fifth person?
You're the fifth person.
Okay. Yes.
You want me to repeat?
Well, I thought I heard Reg, you said Reg and then me.
Yeah, I started with Marissa, didn't I?
Yeah, maybe not. Do it over again. Just do it over again.
Yeah.
Marissa Gilbert,
Yes.
Derek Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Rick Perry,
Yes.
Reg Carter,
Yes.
Jim
Okay.
Abdullah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay, thank you.
Thank you now.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think we had any other items. The one question I had was, are we still considering our board procedures?
Not right now, while we're working 2 days a week.
Okay. But that has just so it
It's out
doesn't.
there somewhere.
Okay. I'm just making sure. Make sure I didn't miss it somewhere. Like it's okay. So that's on hold until we have a little
Maybe August.
more time.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Okay. Second.
Second.
Second by Ray.
Roll call.
All in favor? Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
I don't need a roll call.
Aye.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good night.
Everyone.
Good night.